It all starts in a juvenile detention center, a place that looks more like a fortress on a cliff. Inside, a crowd of inmates gathers as someone asks if they've heard the news. One of them mentions that some loser from the North District picked a fight with the boss's right-hand man. Another inmate scoffs, saying he'd be surprised if the new guy got away with just a few broken ribs. According to him, people getting taken out is pretty common in this place, and the crowd chants for the show to begin. The audience then joins in, cheering excitedly, hoping for a good display of violence. However, the smile on the bettor's face suddenly vanishes when he sees the scene, because what he sees is the big guy being completely pummeled on the ground with no chance to fight back. Even with everyone shouting for him to stop, the beating doesn't let up for a single second. Some try to hold the young man back, but he breaks free and continues the relentless beatdown. The man on the ground takes a series of brutal punches to his face. The henchman's expression is one of pure pain as he takes the hits, unable to do anything to defend himself. The mysterious fighter continues his attack with an impressive fury in his eyes. With a face full of anger, he seems determined not to leave anyone standing. Then, the one-on-one fight turns into a full-blown brawl against the new guy. In an instant, everyone who surrounded him is down on the ground, completely defeated. The same guy who was laughing before is now in shock, unable to believe what he just saw. And in the center of the yard, the victor stands up, covered in injuries but still on his feet. The boss's right-hand man who started the fight is on the ground, completely unrecognizable. The other prisoners look at the boy with fear, as he doesn't even seem human anymore. The inmates watch him in fear, and one of them says he looks something straight out of a nightmare. The young man's strength is so absurd, it's like he came from another world to cause destruction. With a wild smile on his face, he's compared to a mad dog, ready to attack. Under the glare of a spotlight, the winner of the fight stands still, and the other prisoners back away. At that moment, the boy thinks about being called a mad dog from a terrible place, but he knows they all got his origin completely wrong. The young man then walks toward a metal door and starts to remember his past, because the place he came from was far worse than any nightmare they could ever imagine. The story takes us to a flashback, and he says he had a lousy life. The scene shifts to a school hallway that is completely empty and silent. In this place, we see him lying on the floor, alone and helpless. At least, his life was like that until he met a certain person. In his memories, he's hiding in a storage room, hoping not to be found. Trembling with fear, he tries to hold the door shut to keep someone from getting in. But the terror is so overwhelming that the young man can't control his body's reactions. With clenched teeth and trembling hands, he curls up, expecting the worst. At that moment, he realizes it's too late. His pursuer has found him. Someone's footsteps approach slowly, heightening the tension in the air. Completely terrified, the boy just cries, not knowing what to do, and a scary voice asks if he's hiding well. According to the narrator, in this cruel world, there's no room for the weak. Back in the storage room, the boy wonders if the danger has passed. With his face covered in tears and sweat, he hopes it's all over. But the door slowly creaks open, and the aggressor appears with a terrifying smile. The boy is in complete shock, unable to move from fear. His only reaction is to think that he needs to run and escape the situation. However, it's too late, and the bully corners him with a menacing look. The aggressor calls him by name and says there are things worse than a nightmare. Then the boy is thrown to the ground, and the beating begins again, even more violently. The guy even has the nerve to say that if he closes his eyes, he won't feel any pain. And with a sick smile, he promises he'll land the blow this time. The victim can only cry and groan in pain, unable to defend himself. The narrator then says that the only thing scarier than a nightmare itself are the people who find pleasure in seeing others suffer. After the attack, the aggressor complains that an object broke and walks away. On the floor lies the victim in a trail of red, showing that the weak don't survive here. The story explains that juvenile crime had increased significantly, and the public was protesting for tougher laws. The maximum sentence for minors was 20 years, and many were released almost immediately. So the government changed the law to life imprisonment, but the youths were sent to detention centers. In the end, the new measures didn't work, and strength became the only thing that mattered. Bullying became common, and for the aggressors, it was just a game. But for the victims, it was a never-ending nightmare. Because of this, no one can stand up to the strongest, and the only way out a girl finds is a rooftop. When there's no way to survive, the only thing left for the weak is despair and a tragic end. The scene then shows us two students arriving calmly at the front of the school, and another student watches the school entrance, looking worried about something. In an alley, our protagonist's younger brother is cornered by a group of bullies. One of the aggressors taunts him, asking why he doesn't call his older brother for help. Another guy makes a face and mocks him, saying his brother is locked up for ending someone's life. With a malicious smile, he says that since he's the brother of a criminal, there's no problem taking his money. The boy then screams in desperation, trying to defend his relative's honor. But in response, he gets a hard punch to the face that sends him sideways. Then the aggressors surround him, saying he needs to be taught a lesson. Later, we see the young man who was beaten in the storage room walking home with a dirty uniform. In his thoughts, he resigns himself to having survived another day of torment. On the way, he finds a small, abandoned, and badly injured puppy inside a box. He crouches down and tells the animal that they're alike, because they're both covered in wounds. Suddenly, the boy hears a noise and yells for someone to stop what they're doing. Getting up, he tells them to leave the other guy alone and stop the aggression. On the ground is the same boy from before, getting beaten by other bullies and pleading for help. Our protagonist notices that the aggressors' uniforms are from the school next door. One of the aggressors recognizes him and greets him with a mocking tone. He gets closer and puts his arm around the young man's neck, asking what he wants. Surrounded by the bullies, the boy with glasses stammers, not knowing what to say. Just then, another guy demands his wallet, saying his friends are hungry. But the bully complains that the amount is so small that not even a dog would have so little. He then threatens the boy, telling him to bring his breakfast money the next day. With no other choice, the young man nods, looking completely defeated. However, he glances to the side with a worried expression and seems to change his mind. Meanwhile, the other boy is still on the ground, groaning in pain from his injuries. The protagonist then turns and calls out one of the aggressors by name. With a sudden burst of courage, he tells the group to leave the other student alone. The group's leader is shocked by his audacity and glares at him with an angry expression. He says the victim's brother is a criminal, so he's guilty by association. At that, the bully grabs him and warns that being called an upperclassman means nothing, and he dares him to have the same attitude in front of Kanemoto, the school's top dog. The protagonist remembers the demon that torments him, a rich kid who hurts others for fun. He recalls when Kanemoto chose him as a target as soon as he started at the school. According to him, when you become this guy's target, there are only two possible outcomes. Either you lose your mind from the constant torment, or you end up getting taken out by him. Back in the present, the aggressor tells him to get lost, so he doesn't embarrass himself the next day. The boy then decides to leave without causing any more trouble for himself. He says he didn't see anything while the bully smiles, and the protagonist feels like a coward. Because of this, the other boy's younger brother continues to get beaten with no one to help him. The aggressors laugh and yell for the victim to give up because no one is coming to save him. The young man walks away, feeling completely useless for not having the courage to intervene. With tears streaming down his face, he apologizes for being so weak and cowardly. He sees himself as a lonely person with no friends, incapable of doing anything. With that, the boy continues his way home, climbing the stairs of his apartment building. Arriving at his home, he finds his mother and stepfather drinking in the living room. The man then aggressively demands the woman's money since it was payday. She tries to argue, saying the money is for house expenses and the children, but the guy gets angry and slams the bottle on the table, yelling for her to shut up. Suddenly, the loud sound of a door slamming echoes down the hall. The man then becomes violent and tells her to earn money with her body. Outside, the boy just covers his ears, so he doesn't have to hear the aggression. He blames himself for being weak as he hears his mother screaming that they have no money. The stepfather yells angrily, asking who she thinks is feeding the family. The man's cruel words stick in the young man's head, making him feel like a dead weight. The next day at school, the boy is humiliated by Kanemoto, who says he stepped on something. The head bully calls him a filthy animal and demands that he lick his shoe. We see a boy and his mother, surrounded by shadowy figures who are mocking them and asking about their family. The boy gets very angry and yells for them not to dare insult his mother. Then we have a memory from the past, where the young man is running with a look of hatred on his face. He tries to stop a huge man who is about to hit his mother with a bottle. The aggressor has an angry look on his face and prepares to attack the woman on the floor. He ignores the boy and smashes the bottle on his head, telling the kid to get out of the way. The object shatters, and the protagonist starts to bleed heavily from the impact. The force of the blow sends the boy flying, and he falls to the ground. The man threatens to crush the woman, and she screams her son's name, Jin. Lying on the floor, the young man groans in pain and looks toward a table. With great effort, he reaches out his arm and manages to grab a knife that was there. Then the boy gets up, and his glasses gleam as he holds the object. The bully is about to hit the woman again, but doesn't see the boy approaching. At that moment, the boy runs toward the man and yells for him to stop. The brute turns and is surprised to see the child with the knife in his hand. His mother becomes desperate and asks her son to calm down, saying that she's okay. But the young man is determined and says he will protect his mother at any cost. The aggressor just spits on the floor, showing that he doesn't care about the threat. To him, the whole situation of the boy trying to defend her is ridiculous. The man then starts to take off his belt and taunts him, asking if he's a little puppy. The man mocks the boy and takes a step back as if he's scared. At that, the mother steps in front of her son and desperately begs him to stop. The brute gets furious and dares him to try an attack if he has the guts. Then the aggressor raises the belt and yells that he's going to teach the kid a lesson. The boy is terrified as he sees the belt coming toward him, ready to strike. But he doesn't give up and grips the knife with all his strength, ready to fight back. Suddenly, the young man's expression changes, and he seems to make a drastic decision. With a swift movement, he charges at the man with the knife with everything he has. The screen turns red, indicating that the boy managed to land a direct hit on the aggressor. Outside, a heavy rain begins to fall, creating a tense atmosphere. The rain is so intense that some drops get in through the window and wet the floor of the house. Through the window, we see the reflection of the man, who is now writhing in pain from the blow. He looks down and sees his stomach bleeding heavily from the wound he received. The knife used in the attack falls to the floor, stained with the brute's blood. The boy is on the floor in a state of shock, unable to believe what he just did. He's paralyzed and wonders why things had to come to this. The boy then sees his mother being held by the man, and she appears to be injured too. The aggressor is in disbelief that the brat actually went after him and shoves the woman away. The young man looks at the scene in desperation and says he just wanted to protect his mother. With a look of hatred, the man yells for the coward to try that again if he's a man. Lying on the floor, the boy looks terrified but dares the man to come closer. Suddenly, the boy's mother grabs onto the aggressor's leg to stop him. The man looks at her with contempt as she begins to plead for her son. She says that Jin didn't mean it and asks him to please forgive him. Furious, the brute yells for the woman to let him go immediately. He then lands a hard blow on her head, saying she's getting in his way. The woman is hit hard, and the young man screams his mother's name in desperation. On the floor and unable to do anything, the boy begs the man to stop. The aggressor holds her by the hair and stares at her with a sadistic smile on his face. He then says he's going to discipline both of them once and for all so they learn their lesson. But the mother, though injured on the floor, finds the strength to tell her son to run. The boy is paralyzed with fear and starts to break out in a cold sweat, not knowing what to do. But he gathers his courage and says with determination that he will protect her no matter what. His mother insists he shouldn't worry about her and just get out of there. The aggressor kicks some bottles on the floor as he slowly approaches them. With tears in her eyes, the woman screams with all her might for him to run away. The young man supports himself on the floor and sees the shards of glass from the broken bottle near him. He then gets up and runs, apologizing to his mother for having to leave her. Seeing the boy run, the man gets even more furious and curses at the kid. From outside, the boy hears the man blaming him for everything while harming his mother. Lying on the floor and hurt, the woman calls her son's name in a weak voice. With her last bit of strength, she whispers for him to escape and save himself. We see the boy alone in the middle of the street as a heavy rain begins to fall. He regrets running away and not being able to save his mother from that man. On top of a building, he feels useless and apologizes to his mother. Two girls with an umbrella walk past him and comment that he's completely soaked. One of them then approaches him from behind to try and shield him from the rain. The boy feels embarrassed and mentally pleads for them not to look at him. But the girl gets even closer to him and looks at him up close with a gentle gaze. With a smile on her face, she offers him her umbrella, saying he can borrow it. She advises him to go home soon, so he doesn't catch a cold from the rain. The girl places the object in his hand, and the young man is speechless at her kindness. She then runs back to her friend, and the two of them leave together. The friend asks if he isn't a bad person, but the girl says she likes to help people. Alone, the boy thinks he should go home, but wonders where he would go. At that moment, a small dog approaches and starts to rub its head against his leg. The protagonist turns in surprise upon feeling the small animal touching him. The puppy barks at him as if trying to get his attention. The boy crouches down and asks if it's the same puppy from before. He pets the animal and says he'd love to take it with him, but he doesn't have a home. The puppy barks and runs off, and the boy wonders if it wants to be followed. Without a second thought, the young man starts running after the animal down the street. The rain continues to fall heavily as they run through the big city. The boy follows the dog without giving up, even though he's completely wet. Suddenly, the animal stops and barks at the protagonist as if waiting for him. With a tired expression, the young man remains determined to follow the dog. Just then, the dog leads him to a covered alley to take shelter from the rain. The boy understands that this was where the animal wanted to take him all along. Since he has nowhere to go, he decides he'll spend the night in that spot. The next day, we see the entrance of a building with a bright sun shining. Inside, the little dog is confronted by another, larger dog that growls at it. The protagonist hears the noise and looks in that direction with a surprised expression. Then, A tough-looking guy with two girls appears and calls him his best friend. The bully approaches the boy sitting on a mattress and asks what he's doing there. One of the girls says they live nearby, and the other doubts their friendship. With a strange smile, the man confirms that they are indeed friends. He says he'd be bored to tears without the boy to have fun with. The young man is cornered against the wall, and the dog is now growling at him. The delinquent gets annoyed by the boy's silence and questions him about it. He then grabs the boy's face and tells him to bark like a dog. The scene starts with a guy in glasses getting punched so hard his teeth show. Then, the aggressor in the floral shirt gets angry and says he's tired of playing around with them. Seeing the man's expression, the young man with glasses becomes completely terrified of the situation. At that moment, the brute grabs the boy's hair with great force to humiliate him. He yells for the poor kid to hurry up and start barking like he's a dog. But suddenly, a brave little dog appears out of nowhere and bites the bully's hand. With his hand bleeding, the guy gets furious and doesn't seem to like that at all. The boy with glasses is surprised because he didn't expect the animal to protect him. With a look of pure hatred, the big guy says that now they've really done it. He then calls his own guard dog, a giant pit bull, to handle the situation. Soon, the two animals face each other and start growling at one another in the middle of the room. The larger dog shows its huge fangs with a look of pure malice toward the other one. In an instant, the giant dog lunges and attacks the small animal that tried to defend its owner. He bites down on the little dog's neck, which doesn't stand a chance against that beast. The poor little animal falls to the ground completely defeated, and the other one stands tall. Seeing the cruel scene, the aggressor breaks into a very sinister and mocking smile. At that instant, the boy with glasses falls into despair and starts crying and begging. The bully holds him and forces him to watch everything up close, unable to do anything. He says that a weakling can't protect anything, or anyone in this world. The boy pleads one more time, saying the little dog won't make it if this continues. The villain just clicks his tongue with a very malicious smile on his face, and seems to enjoy the situation. He then holds the young man by the hair and forces him to watch the scene, telling him to see how the animal is finished, and he threatens him, saying he should never dare to challenge him again. The big dog continues its merciless attack on the small, defenseless animal on the floor. In the darkness, the little dog lets out one last cry of pain before its end. The boy with glasses screams in despair upon seeing his only friend being taken away like that. With tears streaming down his face, he feels powerless and can't do anything. The brute pulls his hair again, just to get his attention. Then, the aggressor throws the boy on the floor near the lifeless little dog. And to make matters worse, he even kicks the poor kid without showing any mercy. The villain then tells the boy to consume the animal's body if he wants to be forgiven for everything. He gives him an ultimatum and says he'll count to 5 for the young man to obey his order. On his knees, the boy thinks he was finally free from the loneliness he always felt. He wonders why the guy took everything from him in such a cruel and unfair way. The young man remembers how the little dog protected him and gave him a spark of courage. But in the end, he couldn't do anything and realizes he was alone again. His thoughts are of pure anguish, and he begins to question his own fate. The boy wonders if he was born just to have everything stolen from him all the time. Suddenly, the boy with glasses gets up from the floor, and the bully is very surprised. The aggressor doesn't understand anything and asks what the boy is planning to do now. The aggressor gets furious and asks if the boy is going to challenge him now too. He then grabs the young man and threatens him, saying that if he touches him, he'll go to reform school. Whispering in his ear, the villain says his older brother told him it's an amazing place, but the boy would probably be done for very quickly, and even if he tried to escape, he wouldn't get away. The man continues with his threats and now says that the boy's mother will be sold off to a shady club, and when that happens, his friends will take good care of her, leaving the young man terrified. He then questions what he should name the children she might have and suggests the name, Puppy, because only a dog gives birth to another, and he even asks some very disgusting questions about his family. At that moment, the brute turns and says that every time he hears the name Kanemoto, he trembles with fear. The boy with glasses looks up with a gaze full of hatred and says that things have changed now. He yells that now he's trembling with rage and suddenly lands a punch on the guy's face. Next, the young man bites the bully's cheek and screams that there are some things you just don't say. The aggressor is shocked and can't believe the boy actually had the courage to hit him, but the boy doesn't stop and lands another powerful punch that throws the man backward. Full of fury, the young man grabs his enemy's collar and prepares for the next blow. Without hesitation, he delivers a powerful headbutt that instantly breaks the brute's nose. With his face all beaten up, the bully screams in pain and can't believe what happened. The two girls who were with him are terrified and start screaming, calling the boy a monster. One of them runs off to get help, while the other screams for her mom to save her. In the end, the young man stands there looking at the aggressor on the floor, completely defeated. With his face all dirty, the protagonist stares into the distance without any expression. Then the scene cuts to the family court, where the boy's fate will be decided. The judge bangs his gavel hard on the bench, demanding order in the court. He begins to read the charge against 15-year-old Akamori Gen for assault. Seeing the aggressor with his parents, the young man remembers he was arrested right after the fight. He tried to explain everything about the bullying to the police, but no one believed him. The teachers and classmates were bought off, and even his own father betrayed him for money. To make matters worse, his mother was locked in the house and couldn't help him in any way. With nothing left to do, he ended up being sentenced to 5 years in reform school. That day, the boy was finally able to leave behind the nightmare that was his life. But little did he know, he was just trading one nightmare for a new one, an even more brutal place where the strong simply preyed on the weak. Thus, the gates of the juvenile reformatory closed on a never-ending nightmare. The place was grim and surrounded by barbed wire, like a real prison. With his feet shackled, the young man walks slowly into the reformatory. One of the guards then yells at him and shoves him to make him walk faster. The boy thinks about the great injustice, as the real culprit got off completely free. He is then taken to the inspection room to follow the entry procedure. Inside, the guards yell for all the new arrivals to take off their clothes and stand up. And as he obeys, the boy realizes that everyone there is older and covered in tattoos. During the screening, a guard asks for the new guy's name, and he answers, stammering. The officer then yells for him to speak up, because he couldn't hear him properly. With a very unfriendly face, the man glares at the boy, who is quite intimidated. He recognizes the young man and asks if he was the one who tore off some guy's nose. Next, the guard hands him a piece of paper with the number 725. After being hosed down, the boy's hair is dripping wet. Along with other new arrivals, the young man is forced to march down the prison hallway. In handcuffs and only in his underwear, the boy waits his turn for the mandatory medical exam. A doctor in a mask tells him to raise his hands and then turn around. The boy obeys the order and raises his arms, which are still in handcuffs. Meanwhile, the doctor jots down all the information on his registration clipboard. He then taps his pen on the clipboard, indicating he's finished filling everything out. The man puts on his gloves and tells the protagonist to take off his underwear now. The young man grits his teeth in pure humiliation, but has no choice but to obey. Beside him, other tattooed prisoners are also waiting for the terrible inspection. With great difficulty, the boy lowers his underwear, exposing everything to the doctor. Then, the man performs a full and invasive body search on the young man. Lying on the floor, the boy feels completely broken by the situation. All his dignity was shattered by the fear and humiliation he felt. To finish the process, his inmate photo is taken for the official record. In the reformatory yard, all the new inmates are sitting in neat rows. Suddenly, a guard yells for everyone to stand up, because the director has just arrived. A man in an overcoat then appears at the door and pauses for a moment, clearing his throat. With a smile on his face, he asks the boys to sit down and says the place isn't that strict. He continues his speech, saying the young men can count on him and that they won't be seeing any girls. The protagonist wonders if the place is decent, and the director announces he will assign the rooms. With a broad smile, the man says he hopes everyone receives a good education there. After the ceremony, a guard approaches and tells the boy with glasses to come with him. Seeing the new guy, some inmates comment that things are about to get very interesting. A big bald guy seems excited about the arrival of a new target to torment. As he walks, the young man hears others calling him a punching bag, but he doesn't even care. He then stops in front of the guard, holding his belongings, and waits for the next order. The officer glares at him with a sinister smile that makes the boy very suspicious. The guard then announces that he has prepared a very special room just for our boy. The place is actually a dark, isolated cell in the basement of the reformatory. From above, the officer points to the solitary cell and says that's where the new guy will be staying. Without questioning, the young man walks toward his new and frightening quarters. The guard shoves him inside and mockingly tells him to enjoy the place. But upon entering, he finds himself in a room full of upperclassmen who are giving him nasty looks. One of them, with a malicious smile on his face, asks what the new guy's name is. The new guy tells his name to the upperclassmen, who surround him with threatening glares. But without warning, one of the inmates hits him with a very hard slap across the face. The aggressor then yells angrily and demands to know the boy's identification number. With a bleeding lip, the young man with glasses replies that his number is 725. The leader of the group then announces that they are going to start a little initiation ritual. Seeing the situation, our boy is completely terrified and frozen with fear. One of the upperclassmen grabs a bowl and starts mixing disgusting things inside it. Then they force the boy's head down, telling him to remember this well. The cell boss declares him his god and says that his orders are absolute in there. On the floor, the young man with glasses grits his teeth and thinks he needs to endure everything for now. Noticing his resistance, the upperclassman gets closer and asks if the new guy has a problem. He then grabs the boy's hair and says that's enough for now, with a cruel smile. The man says that now he's going to teach him the rules of this place. The hierarchy of the place is explained, where the new guy is an outcast and must respect those above him. The first rule is to hand over all his supplies to the cell boss, who will distribute them. The boy looks at his items and understands that he must never go against someone of a higher rank. One of the inmates whispers in his ear that if he disobeys, things will get ugly. The boss then says he feels like using the restroom and tells the new guy to serve as a footstool. Not understanding, the boy just stands there, and another inmate explains it's to reach the sink. The sink is very high, and the toilets have a flush limit, so they use the new guy for support. The story begins in a dark place with a guy being mercilessly stomped on by another inmate. At that moment, the aggressor says that this is an honorable job given only to the outcasts. Then the bully stands up with a smirk of superiority as he adjusts his pants. The victim, in turn, looks at him with an expression of pure fear and desperation on his face. With his face contorted in pain, he clenches his teeth, enduring the whole situation. Without any warning, the big guy shoves the head of the boy with glasses straight into a sink. But the tables turn, and the aggressor now yells furiously, threatening to finish the other guy. The scene shifts to a prison where a massive brawl is happening, and it seems very serious. In the middle of the chaos, the new guy on the floor apologizes to his mother, thinking he's done for. Unexpectedly, someone appears and stops the attack, asking the bullies to wait. One of the thugs is confused and asks who the guy is and why he's protecting the kid. The man with glasses smiles and says he's going to teach the boy a lesson and asks them to let it slide. The main aggressor doesn't like the interference and yells that it's none of his business. Very calmly, the man with glasses pulls out a wad of cash from his pocket, still smiling. He offers a handkerchief to the brute and says the bosses have a reason for sending the new guy. He continues speaking, warning that if the boy is taken out, it could cause problems. The thug thinks for a moment and agrees with the logic of the mysterious guy named Tamiya. However, another prisoner gets annoyed and complains that the guy is too talkative for a weakling. The group leader then says he'll leave the boy with Tamiya, but the responsibility is on both of them. With that, the aggressors walk away, leaving Tamiya alone with the young man still on the floor. The man with glasses approaches and offers a bandage to the injured boy on the ground. He tells the young man to use it to clean himself up, while the other inmates walk away. The new guy is confused by the help, but Tamiya tells him to remember one important thing. The advice is for him to endure whatever comes his way, because otherwise, he won't be able to survive. But the boy says he can't, and his protector offers help, asking if he wants to live. Then, Tamiya shows him the prison schedule, explaining the general work time. He details that they split into groups for cleaning, and that he's in charge of the laundry area. The young man with glasses listens intently, seeming to understand his new colleague's plan. A guard opens a gate, announcing free time and warning them not to cause any trouble. At that, the prisoners rush out of their cells, as if they've been waiting for this. A group of inmates is talking, wondering if the big brawl will happen again. At that moment, the man with glasses calls the new guy to come with him and watch everything up close. Next, a map of the prison is shown with the north, south, east, and west districts. Tamiya reveals that this is the truth about the reformatory as everyone gathers. Outside, a crowd of prisoners faces off in a fenced-in yard. A tattooed guy yells at another named Song, saying that today will be the day he crushes him. The challenger then grabs his target by the clothes, but the guy doesn't seem to care about the threat. With a smirk, he says that if the other guy wants to fight, he should stop talking. No sooner said than done. Song lands a powerful punch on the big guy's face, who bleeds a lot. With that, a gigantic fight breaks out in the yard, with people flying everywhere. The other prisoners watch the fight from the fence, encouraging the fighter and yelling for him to win. The new guy is completely shocked and speechless, seeing the brutality of the scene. He then turns to his colleague and asks why no one is stopping the fight. The answer is right there, with the guards simply watching everything while smoking. Tamiya then explains that although it looks like a normal prison, this is the true face of the place. He continues, detailing that the reformatory is divided into 4 districts with common areas. As the fight continues, Tamiya reveals the most important rule here: fists do the talking. The young man with glasses doesn't understand and asks his new friend to better explain what he meant. With that, his protector states that brute force is what matters, and the stronger you are, the higher your status. The strongest can even manage a district in place of the guards, controlling the other inmates. This makes the guards' job easier, so they don't get involved in anything that happens between the prisoners. As long as no one is eliminated, the officers simply turn a blind eye to all the violence. He concludes his explanation by saying, "It's exactly like the scene they are watching right now. Back at the fence, the bettors yell furiously, threatening the fighters if they lose. In the yard, Hong Sung fights against 4 opponents at the same time, showing his skill. He manages to block one of their attacks with ease and prepares for a counterattack. The opponent smiles sadistically, even though he's in a disadvantaged position in the fight, but the smile vanishes when Hong Sung lands a devastating punch on his face. The impact is so strong that a lot of blood splatters everywhere, showing the force of the blow. Another guy tries to grab him from behind, but Hong Sung is already turning, ready for another exchange. The dark-haired fighter blocks the blow and lands a powerful punch on the opponent. The opponent is shocked by the force of the attack, as his face is hit squarely. Without wasting time, he kicks another guy away, finishing the fight with a lot of style. Only one blonde enemy remains standing, facing the winner with the others down on the ground. With an angry expression, the blonde guy wonders if his opponent is some kind of monster. He then clenches his bandaged fist, preparing for a last, desperate attack. Yelling with all his might, the guy charges at the dark-haired fighter. The scene shows the blonde's point of view as he runs toward his target for the final showdown. But Hong Sung dodges and lands a perfect uppercut that lifts the opponent off the ground. The impact violently throws the blonde guy's body backward, splattering blood. We then see the winner standing, out of breath, over the defeated body of his opponent. With the fight over, he calmly picks up his shirt that was on the yard floor. The fighter throws the shirt over his shoulder as the crowd of prisoners watches him. Everyone is impressed with Hong Sung's strength and chants his name in celebration. The young man with glasses watches all of this, completely amazed by what he saw. He thinks that the winner of the fight doesn't even seem to be a normal human being. Meanwhile, Hong Sung shows a slight, confident smile after his crushing victory. His eyes reveal a dark intensity, showing that he is very dangerous. Later, in bed, the new guy reflects on the fight, wishing he had some of that strength. But something changes in his gaze, and a new determination suddenly appears in his eyes. The young man with glasses is now lying in his bed, curled up under the blanket. The next day, the sun rises in a cloudy sky over the reformatory. In the mess hall, the inmates are eating their breakfast in a bustling atmosphere. The new guy asks how the fighters came out unscathed, and Tamiya replies that it's a rule. He explains that when there are problems, they settle them with a fight, and beating someone stronger promotes you. Surprised, the boy with glasses asks if anyone can challenge the stronger ones. With a smile, his colleague says, "It's useless unless you're very powerful," because according to him, the top dogs don't care even if you completely demolish your opponent. The boy's jaw drops, completely shocked by this dark revelation. Then, Tamiya says he understands how he feels and what it's like for someone who can't fight. He advises the young man to either endure everything or find someone to protect him in prison. Suddenly, one of the inmates yells for everyone to hurry up and gather immediately. A huge and frightening figure appears at the entrance of the mess hall, and everyone is startled. The new guy's friend tells him to get up quickly and warns him not to annoy the North Wing boss. The bully from before approaches the boss with respect and asks what he's doing there. But the big guy just ignores him and continues walking through the mess hall with a serious look. His heavy footsteps echo through the hall as he approaches their table. Standing in front of the boy, he asks intimidatingly if he is Gen Amamori. Very scared, the young man confirms his identity, stammering before the giant man. Without warning, the boss grabs the boy by the collar with frightening strength. The giant introduces himself as Retsu Kanemoto with an extremely menacing look. He then reveals he is the older brother of the guy, whose nose the new guy tore off. Kanemoto confesses that he was the one who had the boy transferred to the North Wing and promises to take good care of him. He warns everyone that the boy is his now, and whoever takes him out will have to deal with him. After the warning, the boss throws the young man with glasses hard onto the floor without any mercy. One of the inmates watches the scene with a disgusting smile and comments that the situation is good. Tamiya helps the boy up and warns him about the North Wing boss's last target. Later, the new guy is cleaning the bathroom alone and thinking about how quiet the place is. For a moment, he believes he might be safe there since no one is around. But suddenly, a foot kicks the door open with force, showing he's no longer alone. A bald, muscular man appears with a malicious smile, calling him fresh meat. He approaches the boy, saying he looks tasty and fresh, while the boy backs away. With a scary look, the man says not to be afraid, as he just wants to play a little. The young man with glasses panics and tries to defend himself by pushing the aggressor away. Next, a shower is turned on, and water starts to spray, creating a tense atmosphere. Now all wet, the boy faces his aggressor, who seems to enjoy the scenario. The bald man then licks his lips with an expression of pleasure, saying this is the best. He grabs the new guy forcefully, telling him not to be so tense while being held. The man starts grabbing at the boy's clothes, saying they're gonna have some fun. With his face contorted in pure terror, the young man finds himself trapped in this horrible situation. The protagonist is being held by the neck by a giant bald man and tries to break free with all his might. He takes a hard blow to the face, but continues to resist the brute's grip. Then the bald man smiles and says the boy is surprisingly feisty for still resisting. At that, the giant grabs the young man's hair, saying he likes that kind of attitude. But at that moment, the boy grabs the aggressor's arm and asks him to wait a moment. Another guy with glasses appears and interrupts the fight, calling the bald man boss. He warns that if a single scratch is left on the new guy, everyone will have a big headache. The brute gets annoyed by the warning and seems to think about what to do next. With a smile on his face, he lets the young man go and says they were just playing around a bit. But he doesn't miss the chance to comment that he wouldn't mind being in the other guy's place. Getting closer, the bald man says that if he really wants to protect the boy, he better think carefully about the consequences. With that said, the giant turns and walks away, leaving the two prisoners behind. The man with glasses turns to the new guy on the floor and asks if he's okay after the commotion. He helps the boy up while explaining that those guys are dangerous and that revenge is certain. The boy with glasses walks away alone down the hall, thinking about the hard work of cleaning the baths. Suddenly, someone trips him, causing the young man to stumble and fall hard to the floor. With that, the boy finds himself surrounded by a group of prisoners who don't seem to have good intentions. One of the group members looks confused and asks the others what they're doing there. Without warning, one of the henchmen lands a powerful punch right in our protagonist's face. Then they all start kicking the fallen young man, saying this is for touching their boss. A woman in a lab coat appears and interrupts the assault, asking what they are doing. One of the aggressors recognizes her as Dr. Kanda and says they were just teaching him a lesson. She then tells them to stop because it will be a problem to deal with later and warns them about roll call. With that, the guys get the message and leave, saying they'll leave the rest to her. One of them looks back and tells the fallen young man that he got lucky this time. Immediately after, the scene changes and shows the door to the prison infirmary where the boy was taken. Inside, he's lying on a cot, and the doctor warns that the treatment will hurt a little. She dabs a cotton ball with medicine on the boy's injured back, and he winces in pain. The woman tells him not to hold back and to let her know if he needs anything during the process. But the protagonist grips the sheet and says he's fine, even though he's in immense pain. The doctor is a bit surprised by the prisoner's willpower in this situation. She thinks he has more courage than she expected as the boy glares at her angrily. Back in his cell, the protagonist starts thinking about his friend who came to help him earlier. He remembers that Masaki went to clean the bathroom in his place and hadn't returned yet. At that, the boy recalls the threat the bald man made to his friend and starts to worry. A terrible fear grips the young man, who dreads that something bad has happened to his colleague. He then runs to the cell bars and starts desperately shouting for a guard. Elsewhere, his friend is on the floor, revving in pain, looking badly injured. The protagonist continues to bang on the bars, pleading for help from anyone who can hear him. But a cellmate gets up furiously and tells him to shut up because of the noise. On the floor, the young man tries to explain the situation to his furious cellmate. He grabs the man's leg and says that Masaki went to clean the bathroom and hasn't come back. The other prisoner shoves him away forcefully and yells that the guards will look for him anyway. He then tells the boy to shut up and wait quietly without making any more noise. The cellmate grumbles that he was sleeping so comfortably and was woken up for nothing. With his hands on the floor, the protagonist feels helpless, not knowing what to do to help. He then becomes filled with worry, thinking about what might have happened to his friend. The scene shifts to a hallway where several prisoners are gathered, walking back and forth. Our protagonist tries to get through the crowd, asking people to let him pass. But suddenly, two men stop in front of him, blocking his path without saying a word. At that moment, the young man's eyes widen in shock as he sees something terrible up ahead. His friend Masaki is being carried on a stretcher by two guards, looking very injured. Other prisoners watch the scene, and one of them points to the bathroom where he came from. Then everyone sees the mess in the place and comments that they really did a number on the poor guy. The bald man appears, smiling, and asks if the protagonist's friend is still alive after everything. Hearing this, the young man clenches his fists, so hard that his veins pop out from pure rage. He turns to the brute and yells, asking if he was the one who did that to his friend. The giant admits with a smile on his face that it was all very fun to watch happen. But then he approaches the boy and says that now he wants to play a little with him too. The bald man walks away with his gang and tells the young man that he expects an answer later. The bald man grabs another prisoner and warns him not to think about running while the boy screams. With a bruised face, the boy shouts in pain from the blows he's receiving from the group. Even while being beaten, he questions what they are doing and if they want a bigger problem. Then the boy continues to struggle and desperately screams for the brute to let him go. But at that moment, a hand grabs the giant's shoulder, suddenly stopping the attack. At this, the bald man turns around furiously and says the man has a lot of nerve to interrupt him. A mysterious figure appears and shoves the aggressor, who is surprised by this action. The protagonist watches the scene in shock, thinking it's the same person from before. Then the newcomer glares at the giant and tells him to get out because he wants to take a shower. The brute gets an unfriendly look on his face and wonders why that guy is here. Grumbling, he decides to back down and says he'll go somewhere else, leaving the prisoner alone. The mysterious man just watches with a smile as the bully leaves with his gang. With his back turned, the giant grumbles to himself, thinking about what an annoying guy that is. But before leaving, he kicks the other boy and yells that his job is to clean the floor. Then the aggressor looks at the protagonist and warns that things between them aren't over yet. The protagonist stands still, watching the man who indirectly saved him from the trouble. The scene then shifts to water running down the bathroom drain as the place falls silent. The young man watches the man taking a shower and wonders who he is to scare even Nagao. He thinks that if he were that strong, he could protect the people important to him. Suddenly, the man in the shower glares at him and tells him to leave if he's done with what he was doing. With that, the boy has a realization and remembers that he needs to protect his friend Masaki. The scene then shifts and cuts to the outside of the prison cells where they are. Back in the room, the young man watches his friend lying in bed, still very injured. The injured colleague apologizes and says it was all his fault for getting involved in the fight. At this, the protagonist feels powerless and wonders how he can become stronger. Suddenly, the friend in the bed moves a little and makes a noise, waking from his sleep. He says he was treated and is fine, but apologizes for using the bed now. The boy becomes even more shaken and says out loud that all of this is his fault. Then the friend takes his hand and asks the young man not to cry because he's safe now. Tears stream down the protagonist's face as he asks why he went so far to help him. The injured man continues to lie in bed with several marks from the assault on his body. With his hand on his chest, he pulls out a photo from inside his shirt to show his friend. With a smile, he says that the boy looks a lot like his younger brother, which is why he helps him. He shows the photo and explains that his brother was bullied at school for being very shy. Then Masaki reveals that he took the blame for his brother's crime, which is why he ended up there. He wonders how his brother is doing now and if he's living a normal life outside. The protagonist recognizes the boy in the photo as the same one who was being bullied at the school gate. Surprised by his friend's reaction, Masaki asks if he happens to know his brother. With a hopeful look, he insists on the question, wanting to know how his brother was doing. The young man then forces a smile and lies, saying that he seemed to be having fun with friends. Hearing the lie, the friend smiles in relief and says that what he did wasn't a mistake then. Angrily, the protagonist gets up and says he's going to report Nago, but his colleague stops him. The young man is confused by his friend's reaction and asks loudly why he can't do that. Then Masaki makes a shushing gesture and asks his cellmate to speak more quietly. He gets closer and whispers that there is a certain terrifying secret in this reformatory. The boy is shocked by the revelation and his eyes widen, not understanding what's happening. His friend continues to whisper in his ear to tell him the secret, but something interrupts them. A hand bangs hard on the cell bars, getting the attention of the two, who are startled. Another prisoner appears at the door and calls for the protagonist, who turns to see who it is. The guy smiles maliciously and makes an inappropriate comment about their situation. Enraged, the young man stands up and yells at the prisoner, asking what he was implying. Though shaken, Masaki watches the scene and prepares to intervene if necessary. He then tells the man to watch his mouth, because Nagao wouldn't be happy to hear that. Masaki challenges him, asking if he'd like to say that to the boss's face, and the guy backs down. Awkwardly, the prisoner changes the subject and says he's going to take a break, leaving with his group. The protagonist turns to his friend and asks how he can stay so calm in that situation. The boy lying down explains that in this place, you have to hide who you really are to survive. He continues, saying that you need to use everything at your disposal to get ahead. At that, the young man asks if this has anything to do with the secret he was about to tell. Masaki then invites him to go to the infirmary together the next day and wishes him a good night. The scene is in a reformatory dorm where a guy is making the bed of a bunk. In the darkness, a pair of eyes watches everything silently. The night is dark and the full moon illuminates the cloudy sky. We see a young man lying in bed, coughing a little, with a very worried expression. He then looks down, wondering if his bunkmate is okay. His friend Masaki is all beaten up, and he remembers the advice to endure everything quietly. With that, the boy wonders if this is really the best way to protect himself. He then thinks it would be good to be, like the other guy, to become stronger. The boy remembers that even Nagao, the strongest one there, was afraid of that man. He recalls how the man managed to fight against 4 guys at the same time. The memory of that intense fight comes to his mind, leaving him scared. At that moment, he starts imitating the fighting moves while lying in his bed. But he soon realizes it's useless, because he doesn't have the strength to fight like that. Hopeless, the young man curls up in bed, not knowing how to live safely in that place. Outside the building, a heavy rain begins to fall during the night. Meanwhile, in a hallway, Masaki is being led by 2 colleagues to the infirmary. The friend tells him not to worry about the time, while supporting him to walk. Suddenly, the inmate notices some movement and gets scared, as everyone should be asleep. Right ahead, a man in a suit walks toward him, escorted by some guards. The group leader finds it strange and asks what the new guy and Dr. Kanda are doing there. Dr. Kanda explains that Tamiya is not well, so she is taking him to the infirmary. At that moment, Masaki asks if something is wrong with him. The friend with glasses replies that it was just an old wound that opened up, but it's nothing serious. The man in the suit then understands the situation and allows them to go on their way. With a suspicious smile, he turns and tells the boy to take good care of himself. After they walk away, the colleague questions Masaki about not saying anything about Nagao. The protagonist states that he can't trust anyone inside that dark place. He then whispers in his friend's ear that they are manufacturing illegal things in there. The boy is in shock at the revelation and asks who is doing it. Masaki says he doesn't know yet, but if he exposes the leader, he'll get what he wants in return. Finally, he asks his colleague not to tell this secret to anyone else. As they continue down the hall, someone watches them from the shadows with glowing eyes. Finally, the boys arrive at the reformatory's infirmary room. The doctor starts to treat the wounds on Masaki's arm very carefully. Suddenly, 2 guards enter the room, surprising the doctor and the patient. One of the guards calls for Masaki Tamiya, saying he will take him to an outside hospital. The boy refuses the offer, and his friend is confused because an outside hospital would be better. The doctor then intervenes, holding the guard's arm and taking responsibility. The guard gets angry and threatens the doctor, telling her not to meddle in his affairs. With a dark look, the doctor seems to yield to the guard's pressure. Seeing he had no other choice, Masaki decides to cooperate and go with the guards. His friend then tells him to take care and says he will be waiting for his return. The protagonist just looks at his companion with a serious expression on his face. The colleague takes the opportunity to remind him to endure everything in silence, as he had said, but the boy warns that he is the only one who can protect himself and not to trust anyone. With that final warning, the guards finally lead the young man out of the infirmary. The friend with glasses smiles, thinking that now his colleague's injuries will be seen. He walks down the hall, believing that the aggressor will finally get what he deserves. The next day, the sun rises brightly, illuminating the yard surrounded by barbed wire. At lunchtime, all the inmates form a long line to get their meals. The boy gets his tray, wondering when his friend will be back from the hospital. Meanwhile, at the table, an inmate with a malicious smile tells a piece of gossip to another. He says that someone tried to escape the previous night and ended up being eliminated in the attempt. The person telling the story seems very happy about what happened. With a grin from ear to ear, he reveals that the escapee was Masaki Tamiya. Upon hearing that, the protagonist's friend is in shock and drops his tray on the floor. He stands completely paralyzed in the middle of the mess hall with his hands trembling. His mind can't process the news that his only friend is gone. Everyone in the mess hall looks at the boy, who remains standing without any reaction. He thinks it must be a mistake, because Masaki went to the hospital for treatment. Suddenly, some guards approach, walking silently through the mess hall. The inmates watch the officers' movements, as they seem to be looking for someone. The head guard, Shiro Katsumata, appears, and one of the prisoners hopes it's not about him. The officer then turns his head and looks in the direction where the commotion started. He stops in the middle of the hall and prepares to make an announcement to all the prisoners. The guard announces that Masaki Tamiya escaped the previous night and injured 2 guards, and to everyone's shock, he finishes by saying that the escapee was instantly taken out. The boy's friend thinks this is absurd, as he didn't have the strength to hurt anyone. The officer takes the opportunity to leave a very clear warning for the inmates. He says that anyone who doesn't behave will meet the same end as Masaki. Looking at everyone, after the threat, the 2 guards turn and leave, leaving the mess hall in silence. The boy with glasses remembers his friend being taken away the previous night. A bald inmate comments that it's a waste, because the fun was just beginning. With great anger, the young man yells at the brute to not make fun of his friend. The bald man then reveals that Masaki even tried to fight at the beginning, but it was no use. But he quickly calmed down when he was threatened in front of everyone, becoming a little angel. The bully says he wanted to play with the three of them together, and the boy explodes with fury, blended by hatred. The boy runs toward the bald man and lands a punch on him. The blow lands squarely on the big guy's face, who barely moves from the impact. In an instant, the young man takes a powerful counter attack that leaves him very injured. With a powerful kick, the brute sends the boy flying into the middle of the mess hall. Even on the ground, the young man continues to be beaten without being able to defend himself. The bald man scoffs at the boy's strength and challenges him to keep fighting if he can. But the boy with glasses doesn't give up and clings to the bully's leg with determination. The muscular man gets irritated with the young man's persistence and glares at him with hatred. He then stomps with all his might on the boy, calling him useless trash. The brute's friends laugh at the situation, finding the boy's courage unbelievable. The young man continues to be mercilessly assaulted, getting more and more injured. The bald man lifts him by the collar, asking if he's going to play possum now. He prepares another punch to hit the boy's face and end the fight for good. Suddenly, a hand appears and grabs the bully's arm, stopping his attack. A shadowy figure says that he spilled the soup and asks how he's going to fix it. The brute is shocked and scared when he sees who interrupted his fun. The mysterious man squeezes the bald man's arm, who glares at him with a mix of fear and anger. Effortlessly, he throws the giant aside as if he were nothing. One inmate suggests helping, but his colleague stops him, saying it would be useless. The blonde guy offers his soup to the mysterious man, trying to calm the situation. Another prisoner tries to calm the bald man, reminding him that guard Katsamata is nearby. The tension rises in the mess hall, with everyone watching the confrontation in silence. The bully gets furious because if he runs now, everyone will see him as a coward. Masaki's friend is on the floor, all beaten up and almost unconscious. Then the mysterious man says that if he's still alive, he should go get his injuries treated. With a look of hatred and pain, the boy seems to find the strength to react. The dark-haired man then turns and walks toward the bald bully. Lying on the floor, the injured young man watches the scene with his hand on his chest, feeling a lot of pain. He then gets up with difficulty and moves away from the trouble that is about to start. The mysterious man stops in front of the brute, who is holding his food tray. With a threatening look, he orders the bully to get out of his way immediately. The bald man is startled by the boy's attitude and is speechless for a moment. Furious at the affront, the big guy yells for the man to wait and not go anywhere. One of the bully's friends tries to calm him down, but he seems determined to fight. The mysterious man tells him to drop the fight and asks if he wants to be humiliated. The bald man doubts that the boy can beat him, and it seems the situation is about to get worse. Masaki's friend watches from a distance, wondering if he can beat so many opponents. The man says not to get in his way because his food is getting cold and ignores him. Blind with rage, the brute charges, yelling that he'll make him regret it. The other inmates get excited and start betting on who will win the fight. The bully then throws a powerful punch with all his strength at the opponent. But the boy dodges with ease and says he trained so he wouldn't lose anymore. The bald man gets angry that he's only dodging and tells him to stop running and fight. The bald man tries a punch, but the dark-haired boy uses the table to defend himself. The brute's friends celebrate, saying he's amazing and that this is nothing. Masaki's friend watches the fight, shocked by the bald giant's strength. The muscular man gets annoyed, and the opponent complains that fighting is very boring. With agility, the boy dodges a kick while holding his food tray. Seeing an opening, the bully smiles and prepares to attack with everything he has. He thinks that if he defeats his opponent, he'll be #1 in this place. But the dark-haired boy blocks the blow using his tray as a shield. Again, he dodges the attack, moving to the side with ease. The bald man celebrates, thinking he has finally hit his target. But in fact, the mysterious boy blocked the punch, using only his forearm. At that moment, he raises his other arm, preparing for a counter-attack. With a precise elbow strike, he hits the muscular man squarely in the chest. The blow is so strong that the brute doubles over, unable to react. The giant falls to his knees on the floor, completely defeated and humiliated. The winner looks at his tray and laments, having spilled a little of the food. Then he simply turns and walks away, as if nothing had happened. The bald man stays on the floor, furious with the defeat, and grumbles with hatred. Masaki's friend concludes that in this place, strength is what really matters. Suddenly, guard Katsamata appears and tells everyone to shut up or get out. A guard asks the bald man if he needs a doctor, but the irritated inmate yells that he doesn't need anything. With an unfriendly look, the officer continues to watch the whole situation unfold in the mess hall. Then the guard tells the kid with glasses to go to the infirmary if he's hurt, and to stop causing trouble. The big guy then turns and starts to walk away from our protagonist's table. Meanwhile, our hero eats peacefully, and the bald man grumbles that he'll deal with him later. Next, the brute turns to the boy with glasses and threatens him, saying he won't be so lucky next time. He continues, saying that his boss will be released in a year, and will probably come after the boy for revenge. The boy with glasses is visibly terrified by the threat he just received from the other prisoner. Cutting the scene, we are taken to the door of the prison infirmary. A doctor looks at the patient and asks, with a tired expression, if he's there again. The boy with glasses is receiving treatment, but still remembers the threats the bald man made. Just then, the doctor notices his worried expression and asks if everything is all right. He snaps out of his thoughts and replies that nothing is all right, as the doctor watches him from behind. At that moment, the doorknob of the infirmary starts to turn, and someone enters. To their surprise, the one who enters the room is our protagonist, leaving them both confused. The black-haired man then walks toward one of the cabinets in the room. From there, he takes a small bottle that seems to be some kind of medicine. After grabbing the bottle, he turns and prepares to leave the room. Seeing this, the boy with glasses stands up and asks the man to wait a moment. But our hero simply looks at him and, in a cold voice, tells the boy to get out of his way. With an expression of pure desperation, the boy with glasses begs for help. In an act of submission, he bows and asks our hero to teach him how to fight. The protagonist just stares at him with a cold and uninterested expression at the request. Then the black-haired man asks why he wants to learn to fight. The boy explains that he hurt the boss's brother, and he'll come looking for revenge. Our hero then deduces that the boy's reason is just to survive. Desperate, the prisoner confirms and says he needs to get out alive to see his mother. But the protagonist says it's none of his business, and it would be better for him to just endure it silently. However, the boy with glasses stops him from leaving by grabbing his arm firmly. He says he can't survive just by enduring it, and that's why he needs to get strong. With that, the young man pleads once more for the man to teach him how to fight. Meanwhile, the doctor watches the entire interaction through the reflection in a mirror. Our hero breaks free abruptly and says his determination is not his problem. He continues, saying this isn't a school, and he doesn't have time to look after anyone. As the protagonist turns to leave, the other inmate yells for him to wait. The boy explains that Kanemoto is strong and ruthless, and used his parents to escape a crime. The black-haired man says he wouldn't be able to defeat the boss, so it would be useless. He then tells the boy to finish his treatment and get back to his cell soon. Before leaving, the protagonist warns him not to look for him if he doesn't have determination. Alone in the hallway, the prisoner feels hopeless and wonders what to do. Back in the cell, the boy with glasses turns upon hearing a strange movement in the hallway. In a flashback, we see some inmates fighting over another prisoner's belongings. During the commotion, a family photo falls to the ground. The boy with glasses is furious when he sees this and decides he won't just stand by. Without a second thought, he runs toward the aggressors, yelling for them to stop. The young man shouts that it belongs to Masaki and needs to be returned to his family, but one of the aggressors kicks him to the ground and tells him not to meddle in things that aren't his business. Then the bullies surround him, saying he's all alone now and there's no way to escape. They hold him on the ground while one of them picks up the photo he tried to protect. The men tear the photo in front of him, saying the owner is already gone and now it's his turn. The boy is devastated, looking at the pieces of the photograph scattered on the floor. With a face full of anger and frustration, he grits his teeth for not being able to help. Back in the present, the young man gets up and starts running desperately through the prison. He runs to the yard in a heavy downpour, remembering how he has always been humiliated. The boy thinks he won't accept being taken out after everything he's been through and decides to change his fate. On the ground, a folder soaked by the rain is seen as the young man's determination grows. Our protagonist is in the yard training when he sees the boy approaching him. The boy stops in front of him and thinks that he wants to live with his head held high without depending on anyone. He tells the black-haired man that he will do whatever it takes to achieve his goal. He then bows in apology and pleads for one more chance to prove his worth. The protagonist observes the boy and notices that his gaze has finally changed. With that, he says he will teach him on one condition: move all the sandbags in 1 hour. With a slight smirk, he gets ready to start the boy's challenge. He then yells for the boy to start, and the young man runs to begin his task. Under the heavy rain, our hero watches the prisoner's effort from a distance. The boy with glasses picks up the first sandbag with great difficulty due to its weight. He clenches his teeth and continues to push himself to the limit, so as not to fail the test. At that, he remembers when he was running from Kanemoto with his mother, carrying their bags. The young man thinks that he's used to this kind of effort and feels confident. With his renewed determination, he continues to carry the sandbags without stopping. He motivates himself by thinking it only took him 1 minute to get there, so he can do it. The protagonist watches, impressed, and thinks the boy is surprisingly capable. From inside the prison, 2 other inmates watch the scene, and one tells the other to ignore it. His colleague asks who Hong Song is, and the other warns him not to mess with him. The boy changes the subject and asks if his friend's visit was approved, but it wasn't. The other prisoner laments that even if he got it, it would only be for a few minutes. The scene then takes us to the hallway of the penitentiary's visitation rooms. A sign on the door indicates that this is the visitation room of the prison complex. Inside the room, a man angrily crushes a soda can in his hand. He slams the can on the table and angrily asks when they are going to get rid of someone. The man replies that they need to deal with someone named Tetsu Kariha, who is meddling in their business. Indignant, his brother yells and asks if that's more important than him being attacked. The boss remains silent and just gives a threatening look to his impatient subordinate. The boy stands up, annoyed, and asks if the boss is abandoning him after what happened. Without warning, the leader lands a powerful punch on his brother's face and tells him to shut up. He humiliates him, saying the boy got beaten by a weakling and shouldn't be so full of himself. Next, the big guy grabs him and asks why he doesn't solve his own problems. The other inmate is stunned with a bruised face, unable to react to the assault. Scared, the younger prisoner apologizes and says he was wrong to complain. The boss then grabs his hair forcefully, demonstrating all his dominance. He explains that they need to be patient because consecutive eliminations would raise suspicions. The plan is to let the target live for a year and after that, make him experience a living nightmare. With an evil smile, he eats a piece of fruit while coldly planning his revenge. Back in the yard, the sky begins to clear and there are only 15 bags left for the boy. Even exhausted and sweating profusely, he continues to carry the sandbags with determination. He drags himself along the ground, thinking he just needs a little more strength to finish. The protagonist looks at the clock and thinks that with only 10 minutes left, he won't make it. However, he admits that the boy's performance is much better than he imagined, but he concludes that at this level, the young man won't be able to keep up with his training. The boy with glasses notices the black-haired man's look and wonders if he's disappointed. With that, he thinks it makes sense, as he has no redeeming qualities. He starts to have doubts and thinks the man never intended to teach him from the beginning. His mind is flooded with negative thoughts about all the things he feels incapable of doing. Desolate and exhausted, he considers that maybe it's better to just stop trying. But at that moment, a voice emerges, and one of his aggressors asks if he's giving up. With a contemptuous smile, the man says that's probably the best choice for him. Another inmate joins the taunting and says he should just be submissive to them. The man curses him, calling him a failure just like his mother and blaming him for his ruined reputation. The boy with glasses is shocked when a hand touches his shoulder in the middle of the argument. It was Kanemoto's brother who, with a mocking smile, asks if he hit the nail on the head. He continues the taunt, asking if the young man wants to be like Hong Song and tells him to look at himself. With tears streaming down his face, the boy denies everything and says the accusations aren't true. The aggressor pressures him to admit his uselessness and quietly wait for his end. All the bullies burst out laughing and call him trash, telling him to just drop dead. But the young man shows his teeth and yells with all his might that he is not trash. In a fit of rage, he yells not to be underestimated, breaking through his barrier of doubt. From a distance, the protagonist hears the scream and turns to see what's happening. The boy then decides that if he's going to go down, he'll go down fighting to his absolute limits. He vows that he will change and that he doesn't want to have any regrets, even if it's the end of him. Seeing the boy's determination, our hero gives a slight, satisfied smile, with his eyes shining with pure determination. The boy charges forward, thinking it's not so bad. On an impulse, he stops his foot hard on the ground and runs with impressive speed. The young man reaches the pile of bags and prepares to continue his task without rest. With less than 10 bags left, he fills himself with courage and vows to finish the challenge. But the protagonist notices that the boy's body looks strange and is near its limit. Worried, he runs toward the boy and yells for him to stop immediately. The young man hears the warning but refuses to stop, saying he can't do that now. He grits his teeth, thinking he needs to survive and prove his worth at any cost. Our hero gets even closer and yells for him to stop pushing himself so hard. He warns him that at this rate, the boy is going to end up done for. Seeing that his words aren't reaching him, he decides he'll have to stop him by force. The boy continues to drag himself along, thinking he just needs a little more strength. He looks at the last 3 bags on the ground and focuses on his final goal. With a hopeful smile, he thinks that if he can carry these, it will all be over. But at that exact moment, the black-haired man hits him with a punch to the stomach. The blow knocks the wind out of the boy, who is paralyzed with pain and surprise. Lying on the ground, the young man asks why the other inmate attacked him like that. The protagonist explains that he had already reached his limit and had to be stopped, but the stubborn boy tries to get up and says it's not over yet, and he'll see it through to the end. With that, the man holds him by the shoulders and says he's already done more than enough. The boy with glasses then asks if the other could teach him to fight, and the mysterious man accepts the request. With a confident smile, he promises to turn the boy into the strongest fighter there is. This declaration leaves the young man with glasses completely shocked and speechless at the situation. Suddenly, the scene changes, and the boy with glasses is thrown to the ground with force by his new master. Everything goes dark for the boy, who can't see anything around him. Just then, he starts to see the silhouette of a person slowly approaching in the darkness. The man reveals himself, and the boy wonders who this figure named Mamoru could be. Then the strange man runs toward him, yelling that he's going to finish him. With that, the boy with glasses wakes up from his nightmare, screaming and startled in the hospital bed. A woman who appears to be a doctor is startled by the patient's scream while adjusting his IV. She says he's fine now, but thinks it's a joke that they brought the boy in that state. At that moment, his master appears at the room's door, stating that he is very serious about the training. The doctor doesn't like the man's attitude at all and gives him an angry look. The fighter says he'll wait outside and that the young man has only 10 free minutes to rest. With that said, he leaves the room with the doctor, closing the door behind him. Alone in the room with his trainer, the boy seems a bit intimidated by his presence. The man explains that they will train by pretending the boy is undergoing treatment to avoid suspicion. He reinforces that everything must be kept secret until the training is over and asks if the young man understood. The boy bows, thanking him very much and promising to do his best. As the master asks for his attention, he reveals that carrying the sandbags was just a warm-up and that, at the moment, the boy doesn't stand a chance. Outside, the man talks to the doctor and says that things won't be easy for the boy. Back in the room, the doctor is cleaning the young man's arm with a piece of cotton. The boy wonders if, after all his effort, he still has no chance of winning. Noticing the boy's anguish, the doctor asks what's going on with him. He then takes the opportunity to ask what kind of person his master really is. The young man describes his trainer as a mysterious person who never lets anyone see his true self. The woman replies that he's not a bad person and that he ended up there because of his family. But as she cuts the bandages on the boy's arm, she seems to hesitate to continue the conversation. She advises him, saying that in this world, there are some things it's better not to know. Next, the doctor says she has already spoken with the guards and that his master is waiting for him in the warehouse. With a subtle smile on her face, the young woman wishes the boy good luck in his training. After that, we see the building where the warehouse is located under a bright sun. On the door of the place, a sign indicates that free time is over and it's time to train. A sliver of light illuminates a dark hallway, creating a suspenseful atmosphere. The boy with glasses is surprised to see the inside of the place where he will train. He enters a room full of lockers and shelves that looks like a storage room. The boy comments that the place is very dark and he can barely see properly. His master appears, explaining that training without sight will sharpen his other senses. The young man bows politely and wishes his instructor a good day. The man says there are 2 strict rules before they begin and prepares to state the first one. The master sets the first rule, which is not to mention the training to anyone or show what he has learned. The young man immediately agrees with his instructor's order, shouting, "Yes, sir!" The boy even tries to question it, but the man already imposes the second rule, which is to obey without asking questions. At that, the instructor asks the student to show his skills and gives him only 1 minute. Once again, the boy agrees and prepares to show what he's capable of. He begins to exercise, doing some frog jumps with great difficulty. Next, the boy tries to do push-ups, but his body already shows signs of fatigue. Right after, he moves on to sit-ups, trying to do as many as he can. The effort is visible as he tries to do pull-ups with his face all tensed up. The instructor evaluates his performance with 23 jumps, 6 push-ups, and only 2 pull-ups. With a disdainful look, the man says the result is pathetic and that he will restructure the method. Seeing that the young man can't take any more, the instructor tells him to stop because it's been enough. The master comments that yesterday's strength was just a one-time thing and that they will start with the basics. He sets a goal of doing 40 jumps, 20 push-ups, and 60 sit-ups in 3 days. The boy is confused and questions the master, thinking he was going to learn how to fight. The man repeats the young man's question ironically, how to fight. He then throws a quick punch that stops inches from his student's face. The instructor then questions if, with that body, he could dodge an attack. He tells them to get back to work, but the young man asks him to wait a moment. The boy with glasses then begs for a short break of just 5 minutes. The master reminds him that the rule is to obey, but decides the boy deserves an explanation. He says the plan was created because the young man is very weak compared to the others. As an example, the instructor says that to beat the room leader, you need to do 70 push-ups. The boy with glasses is shocked by the goal and asks if that would be in 1 minute, and the man confirms. The master then states that their district is ruled by strength, and without it, there is no way to survive. He also warns not to underestimate a guy named Kanemoto, who is ruthless and always finishes what he starts. The boy starts to break into a cold sweat, imagining what will happen if he can't fight. With that, he has a vision that his life will become a living nightmare at the hands of that man. The instructor notices the change in attitude and asks if he still wants a break after all that. With a determined look, the young man shows that he's ready to get back to training without a break. And the scene shows a guy yelling with all his might that he's going to face the challenge as light streams in through a barred window. With that, the young man with glasses tells his mentor that he wants to live and overcome all his limits in that place. Then he bows as a sign of respect and begs to be properly trained so he can protect himself in the future. But the master warns the young man not to be all talk and tells him never to annoy him by slacking off. At that moment, the instructor stares at the boy and demands that he prove his determination through real actions from now on. As the student struggles, he remembers someone important and feels he needs to protect what is precious to him. With a serious look, the dark-haired man asks if the recruit fully understood the terms of this dangerous deal. The student quickly responds with a positive shout, and then the special training finally begins for real in that room. But the scene changes to a doctor giving posture instructions and telling the rookie to lower his hips to do the exercise correctly. The doctor then comments that the protagonist is very stubborn and acts like a lone wolf who doesn't like to follow orders. Back to the physical exertion, the boy is on the floor, completely out of breath and sweating a lot from fatigue. Then he collapses again on the hard floor, showing that extreme exhaustion is almost overcoming his will to continue. Noticing the uniform, the young man realizes the clothes are huge and wonders why he has to wear something so baggy. With that, the mentor explains that the outfit is meant to hide muscle growth and not attract the enemy's attention. He continues the warning, saying that if they find out about the training, they will try to take the boy down because he is still very weak. At this point, the man decides to explain how the power hierarchy works inside the reformatory and who the local bosses are. But the apprentice gets curious and asks if all the leaders there are cruel and obsessed with brute force like the others. The instructor says no, revealing that only one of them is truly power hungry, while the others have different views. Intrigued, the young man questions how the other people managed to reach the top of the command chain without using only violence. Smiling, the veteran asks if he thought strength was everything and explains that wisdom is the secret to controlling others. The mentor explains that these guys became leaders and hold monthly meetings with the guards to maintain total order in that place. To prevent secrets from leaking, the conversations happen in an interview room and they pretend it's just a casual chat between friends. We then see that each big shot has a different fighting level, which is why they always have trusted henchmen by their side for any fight. Then the scene focuses on the round table, where the powerful figures of the reformatory sit to discuss the current problems of the prison. With that, the mood starts to get tense as one of the attendees taps his fingers on the wood, showing impatience with the long conversation. At this moment, we are introduced to the dangerous Tetsu Kariha, who is the leader of the South District and has a criminal record full of serious stuff. He starts taunting the other big guy, saying he can't just stay quiet after what recently went down in his territory. But the tattooed brute loses it and yells that the matter is nobody's business in that meeting room. At that, the pink-haired guy continues to mock him and suggests the giant be disciplined in a very humiliating way if he can't control himself. He then states that if his colleague can't fight anymore, he'll end up alone in a pretty pathetic and sad situation. With a bizarre smile on his face, the villain starts laughing at his rival, showing he isn't the least bit afraid of the imminent danger. At that instant, the giant stands up furiously and challenges the mocker, while another leader tries to calm things down to avoid the worst. Meanwhile, we meet Shusu Kazami, the head of the West District, who comments on the strict investigation happening over there. But the provocateur doesn't stop and questions if the plan was really to take someone out to protect this Amamori guy. Then, the troublemaker wonders if the subordinate acted on his own, or if he received direct orders from the one in charge. The long-haired man then says that the giant's follower is a bit slow, and got his dumbness from his own master. With that, the tough guy completely loses his patience and grabs the skinny guy's collar with a lot of pent-up anger in his eyes. At that moment, the tattooed man asks if his rival really wants to see some action, and shows he's ready for a physical fight. But the pink-haired psycho grabs a glass bottle and asks if his opponent really wants to face this dangerous fight right now. With that, the villain strikes the big guy's face with a heavy object, and total chaos breaks out inside the closed room. One of the bosses tries to break up the fight, warning that if the director finds out, it will be really bad for all of them. Then the same guy yells that's enough of the mess and shows that his patience with this nonsense is over. At that moment, a fourth leader appears, lights a cigarette, and calls the two brawlers' attitude pathetic. With that, we meet Koichi Naruse, head of the East District, who says that even after years, they're still like children. At that, the man in the tank top grabs the giant's collar with great force, showing he's not messing around. Right after, the newcomer throws both fighters away, breaking up the fight with absurd strength all at once. With that, the peacemaker thanks him and says the new leader is the only one capable of controlling those two crazies. Even all beaten up, the brute gets annoyed and demands the meeting start right away to solve the problems for good. Meanwhile, the injured pink-haired man glares at his rival with a look of hatred, showing that the beef isn't over. Then the East leader orders them to keep an eye on the two instigators, and that an incident like this must not happen again. With a serious look, the guy in the tank top warns the big guy not to dare lay a finger on this Amamori person. Seeing the tension, the other boss tries to calm things down, saying he understands their feelings, but that it's better to avoid more trouble. The giant remains silent at the table and clenches his fist tightly, showing all his contained anger at that moment. At that, the tattooed man threatens them both, saying that if they drag the East District into this mess, he won't forgive them. But the pink-haired man replies that he doesn't care, as long as his rival takes good care of his little pet. The big guy stays quiet and just observes the situation as the tension in the room escalates between them. Then, the provocateur interprets the silence as a sign of agreement and asks if he's right about it. The villain then claps happily and declares that the meeting is over, since everything was resolved through fear. As the others leave, the giant remains seated and picks up a glass with a handful of pent-up anger. Right after, he crushes the object with force, showing that he won't let this humiliation slide at all. With an expression of pure fury, the giant shows he won't easily accept the orders of the other leaders. At that moment, his right-hand man appears and calls for the boss. While he's still holding the glass shards in his hand, the subordinate comments that the other bosses didn't seem convinced and asks about the plan for this Tamiya guy. But the big guy just scoffs at the order he received, repeating that he can't take out Amamori. He then stares into space and says this situation is boring because no one in this place can really stop him. With that, the brute orders the word to be spread that he can do whatever he wants with the target, as long as he doesn't eliminate him for good. The henchman accepts the boss's order and tells him to leave everything in his hands, that the message will be delivered to everyone. As the blood drips down his hand, the man thinks of his target's name, and his hatred only grows more and more. With a dark and terrifying look, the villain smiles and thinks that things are finally about to get fun around here. Back to training, the protagonist reflects and comments that there are all kinds of bosses in that dangerous reformatory. The mentor then describes that one is violent, another is cruel, and the third is an observer, but he stops before talking about the last one. The student is confused by the pause, and shows he doesn't understand the reason for so much mystery about the fourth leader of that place. Then, the instructor explains that the East District boss is the type who avoids conflict, and that's the policy of his entire district. But he warns that if you start a fight, the leader will protect you, but the punishment afterward is dealt by him without mercy. The boy with glasses is shocked by the information and asks if the guy has that much influence to act that way. With that, the master reveals that he is the strongest man in the detention center, and nobody knows anything about his past. After the whole explanation, the instructor says he has given the necessary information and tells the student to get back to training. Without complaining, the young man accepts, and the first exercise ordered is 20 push-ups to start warming up. Meanwhile, the doctor observes everything and gives instructions to the boy while wondering when she last saw the mentor so excited. She then writes a report and wishes Amamori good luck, showing that she is also involved in this grand plan. The scene begins with some henchmen yelling that the area is restricted and no one can pass through that hallway. We then see a bald, beaten-up guy complaining that he was made a fool of by that Korea guy in front of everyone. The giant gets angry at the incompetence and punches the henchman, asking how he's going to fix this mess now. On the floor, the man shouts that he'll go after the rival immediately, and that he'll beat him up without any mercy. But the boss calls him trash and asks if he plans to cause more trouble and bring shame to the group. At that moment, the right-hand man tries to calm the leader down, saying that getting angry won't solve the situation. He suggests letting the matter go, as the subordinate has already been punished enough for his huge failure. With that, the advisor tells the man to control himself more from now on, as they have things to do. The bald guy apologizes to the boss, but the big guy warns that he knows what will happen if he messes up again. Out of patience, the leader yells at the incompetent henchman to get out of his sight immediately and not come back. The man leaves the room all beaten up and humiliated, but with a look of pure revenge for everything that happened. The boss then says it's Amamori's fault, and that even though he can't eliminate the target, he won't let it slide. With a wicked smile, the advisor agrees and says they're going to give the rookie a taste of what's to come. Meanwhile, our protagonist is training hard and feeling the warm welcome he received in the place. The scene cuts to the outside of the reformatory, showing the imposing building under a cloudy, gray sky. In the shower, the young man is cleaning the area and complaining that the muscle pain from training is still really bad. He wonders if, with all this pain, he'll even be able to train properly today without passing out. But suddenly, one of the showers turns on by itself, and the young man gets startled because there was no one around. Confused, he thinks he was sure he had closed the main valve and goes over to check what's going on. As he approaches the valve, the boy notices something strange and stops suddenly, looking ahead. The boy with glasses wonders what's happening as a hand approaches him from behind by surprise. At that, someone grabs his head with force and slams his face against the wall without any mercy. The attacker says the boss told them to take care of the rookie, and the other points to a bucket nearby. They hold him and show him a bucket of dirty water and roaches, saying he looks tired from the hard work. Then, the bullies dunk the boy's head into the disgusting water and start laughing at the humiliating situation. The scene changes to the laundry room, where some inmates are folding clean clothes into neat piles. Meanwhile, the protagonist is pushing a laundry cart and getting ready to put in another load to wash. But he notices that the same guys from before are ignoring him and wonders about their strange attitude, not paying much attention. The young man continues his work and starts putting the dirty items into the washing machine. At that moment, he is pushed hard from behind and almost falls into the industrial washing equipment. The boy gets a huge scare and is thrown into the washing machine before he could react to the attack. The attackers force him into the drum, and he screams desperately, asking them to stop the madness. With the boy trapped, they close the door, and one of the bullies gets ready to start the full wash cycle. Inside the machine, the young man curls up as the drum begins to spin rapidly with him inside. He bangs on the glass and begs to be let out, while the bully outside just smiles at the terrible scene. An inmate comments that this is dangerous, but the group's leader says the boss ordered them not to eliminate him, so it's fine. Another prisoner watches the scene with pity and comments that if it were him, he wouldn't be able to handle this kind of thing. Time passes, and now at lunchtime, one of the inmates carries his food tray through the crowded cafeteria. Despite everything, the protagonist appears in the cafeteria with his tray and a serious, determined look on his face. But as he walks, someone simply throws the rest of their food onto our hero's tray for no reason. The bully pretends it was an accident and throws hot food on our hero's tray with a cynical smile on his face. With that, the hot soup spills on the young man, and he screams in pain while the attacker just watches the scene from afar. At that, the other bullies approach, and one of them cynically asks if the boy with glasses is okay after what happened. Then another attacker kicks his tray and tells the boy to be more careful where he walks in that cafeteria. On the floor, the young man is forced to eat the food from the ground because the boss ordered them to make sure he ate well. But a guard appears and yells at everyone, asking if they want to go to solitary because of the mess. The guard complains that the boy always causes trouble and tells him to go to the infirmary alone to take care of his injuries. On the fallen tray, we see the protagonist's broken glasses and some stains, showing the violence of the recent attack. In the infirmary, the doctor treats his wounds and comments that this is going too far and his body won't be able to take it. With that, she turns to the boy's mentor and asks if he has any kind of plan to stop this situation. But the instructor replies that he's not his babysitter, and that the student needs to go through this, because not everything in this lesson is bad. The boy with glasses is confused by the answer and asks why he has to take so many hits without being able to fight back. Then, the master explains that there are things you only learn by taking a beating, and understanding pain is the key to getting stronger. He continues, saying that the guys in the cafeteria had certain habits before attacking, and that to win, you need to see them. The man then tells the young man to observe his attackers while he's being beaten, and not to waste this unique learning opportunity. But the student says he can't do that, because he doesn't have the luxury of thinking about anything else while being pummeled. At that, the instructor holds the boy's shoulder firmly and offers to teach him how to do this tactical observation. He says it requires will and conviction, and then asks the young man to choose if he will live the rest of his life as a fool, or if he will burn this humiliation into his heart and become a man who makes all his enemies tremble with fear. With his eyes wide with determination, the protagonist finally understands what he needs to do to change his destiny. The scene changes, and now the training resumes with the two exchanging blows in a very intense hand-to-hand combat. The instructor lands a solid punch on the student's face, who can't defend against the fast and direct attack. The master yells at the young man not to close his eyes, and he agrees, because in a real fight, that would be fatal. With that, the mentor explains that opponents always show a sign before attacking, and that he needs to watch carefully. Then another blow comes towards the boy, and the instructor tells him to identify the attack's movement pattern. With a focused eye, the young man needs to analyze and memorize his rival's gesture before he can even think about dodging. Finally, after taking a lot of hits, the protagonist manages to dodge a punch for the first time in training. But the man says it took him an hour to dodge once, and that a real fight is still impossible. The master says that's why letting enemies hit him is important and tells the student not to forget what he's learned. In a serious tone, the instructor warns his pupil not to waste the chance he's being given right now. Then the man puts on his coat and says he has business to attend to, and the young man can come back after finishing the exercises. Before leaving, he praises the boy, saying he did well and that he's no longer just a loser. The protagonist is surprised by the compliment and seems a little more confident after hearing his master's words. The scene cuts to the instructor in a bathroom, counting something while he calmly waits for time to pass. Soon after, he goes to the infirmary and asks the doctor for medicine, who is shocked by his crazy request. But the man replies that going easy on the boy won't do any good for their intensive training. He continues, explaining that they don't have time and the method is risky, but that's why the young man needs to get strong fast. Then the doctor asks if he's not afraid the boy will break, because if he gets caught, he'll be completely finished. With a confident smile, the mentor replies that the student isn't as weak as she thinks he is. He then looks at the doctor and says that just as she believes in him, he also believes in his pupil's potential. While training, the protagonist focuses on irritating his eyes and not closing them, even with the bullies beating him up in the background. Afterwards, he splashes water on his face and thinks that the next step is to track high-speed objects with his eyes. With his eyes open, he stares into the strong stream of water and feels that this part of the training is really painful. Meanwhile, he continues to get beaten up every day, but without ever throwing a single punch back at the guys. But slowly, the young man starts to get the hang of it and is able to observe his opponent's attacks better. In the cafeteria, one of the attackers complains that it's no fun hitting him if the boy doesn't fight back and the guards ignore it. Then, two inmates talk about making a bet, but the other one doesn't care how many punches the rookie will take. The first guy then says he's wrong and reminds him that a dangerous fellow is about to get out of solitary today. The scene then focuses on a dark cell, and we see that the so-called Kaioyama, the collector, has finally been released from his punishment. The inmate comments that the psycho must be stressed out, and we see a cloth with various parts of people on the table. With a crazy look in his eyes, the newly released prisoner is eager to start a new wave of violence in that place. The scene changes to free time, and we see the prison yard surrounded by fences and barbed wire everywhere. While the protagonist is sitting alone, some inmates whisper about the new danger that's lurking around. We then see this Kaioyama walking with a guard, who warns him not to cause trouble with anyone again. But the man just gives a sinister smile, showing he has no intention of following the rules of the place. Soon after, he approaches our hero and challenges him to a fight right there in the middle of the prison yard. Two inmates watch the scene, and one of them explains that the guy isn't strong, but he's completely out of his mind. He continues, saying that while others just punch, this one likes to choke his victims and take some souvenirs. With that, we see the psycho in action, and he really does take some parts from the people he defeats in fights. To make matters worse, the guy keeps everything in glass jars, which is why he earned the nickname, the Collector. The so-called Takedo Kaioyama introduces himself to the protagonist with a fake smile as the atmosphere gets very heavy between them in the yard. Then the psycho reveals his bizarre desire to take the boy's left eye and tells him to make up any excuse for the local guards. Shocked by his rival's madness, the young man realizes he's facing a real psychopath who has no remorse for his actions. The villain then approaches slowly with a dark look and warns that the rookie's silence will be taken as a yes. At that moment, the maniac leaps towards the hero with sharp claws, while the other prisoners start yelling and calling for bets on the fight. With that, one of the inmates organizes the betting and announces that the rookie's odds of winning are only 1 to 10 against the monster. The first blow is thrown with absurd speed, and the boy with glasses desperately tries to defend himself from his opponent's fury. Even while trying to protect himself, the boy feels the impact of the attack and backs away, trying to catch his breath so he doesn't fall right at the start. With a bizarre expression, the attacker comments that the target's taste is very fresh and shows he's enjoying every second of the cruel combat. The collector then prepares to advance again, showing he won't give the poor student with glasses any rest. At that instant, the master tells his pupil to carefully observe the enemy's every move to find an opening in the total chaos. As the villain attacks again, the young man focuses his vision and tries to predict where his rival's arm will move so he can escape. With great concentration, the hero tries to find a pattern or a tell in his movements that will help him survive the psychopat's fatal blows. But the psycho's speed is too high, and he manages to land a shallow cut that makes the protagonist's blood splatter on the gray ground. Even injured, the boy doesn't give up and tells himself that he's starting to see the attacks after so much mental effort. At this, the attacker gets irritated with the boy's resistance and backs off for a brief second, while the spectators watch in silence. The maniac then warns his opponent not to count on his luck forever and charges forward to end the dispute once and for all. With a sharp gaze, the student notices that the rival always attacks with his left before attempting a dangerous chokehold with his right hand. Determined to turn the tables, the young man also makes his bet and goes for a counter attack with all the determination left in his heart. At that moment, his glasses fall to the ground and shatter completely, symbolizing that the real fight for his life has just truly begun. Seizing the opening, the boy with glasses lands a solid punch on the villain's face, showing that the hard training paid off. With the force of the impact, the psychopath is thrown back and hits the ground hard while everyone watches, dumbfounded. Down and surprised, the collector can't believe he was hit by a rookie and tries to get up with a lot of pent-up anger. Without giving his rival time to react, the hero continues the attack and strikes the fallen opponent to secure his final victory. Nearby, the other prisoners are shocked by the scene and can't believe their favorite lost the fight just like that. The maniac's face is badly bruised, and he ends up completely defeated in the middle of that dangerous prison yard. Seeing the result, the inmates shout that the boy must have used some kind of forbidden help to beat that monster. While some complain about the money they lost on the bet, a mysterious leader watches everything from afar behind the metal fence. Even all beaten up, the protagonist gives a slight smile and feels the relief of having overcome his first big challenge there. In the infirmary, the mentor pats his pupil on the head and warns him not to get cocky with this small success. Worried, the doctor finishes the bandages and comments that the young man was very lucky to get out of that brutal confrontation alive today. Sitting on the cot, the boy reflects on the combat and says that just surviving would have been enough for him at the moment. Looking at the broken object, the hero feels sad to see that the glasses his mother gave him were completely destroyed in the fight. Suddenly, the instructor Shinya enters the room and asks if the medical treatment is finished so they can continue with the plan. Walking with a firm step, the man approaches his student and shows that he still has many important lessons to teach him. The young man then bows as a sign of gratitude, but the master says he only defeated the weakest opponent in that place. The veteran then warns that things will only get harder from now on, as there are many powerful enemies there. At that moment, the mentor holds out his hand and gives him a small, mysterious box as a gift for his first real achievement. Curious, the hero receives the object and wonders what could be inside the simple package given by his trainer. Before leaving, the man warns that the next training session will be brutal and says the boy must become a mad dog to earn respect. The doctor complains that the instructor should at least praise the boy at such an important moment like this. Upon opening the small box, the young man finds a pair of contact lenses and is told they will be very useful in the upcoming training sessions. At that, the doctor points to another item on the table and says there's one more surprise waiting for him. With a calm gesture, she hands him a food container and asks the hero to open it without delay. Curious, the boy opens the lid and smells a familiar aroma that reminds him of happy moments from his past. At that moment, the protagonist's eyes widen in shock as he realizes what's really inside that lunchbox. The woman then reveals that the dish of spicy rice balls was specially prepared by the young man's mother. Smiling gently, the staff member comments that the lady seemed to be in very good health when she delivered the homemade meal. With tears in his eyes, the recruit holds the chopsticks and feels a very strong emotion welling up in his chest at that instant. Overcome with nostalgia, he remembers when he was a child and watched his mother cooking with so much love in their home kitchen. Back then, the woman would smile and say the food would be ready soon, while the little boy eagerly waited for the feast. Looking at the gift, the hero realizes how the seasoning seems identical to what he used to eat every day. Crying a lot, the boy starts to eat and tells himself that the taste is simply wonderful and comforting. Intrigued, he asks how the doctor managed to find out about his family and who went to pick up that package from so far away. She then explains that the mentor called even before the fight started and asked her to arrange for his favorite dish, Upon hearing that his master believed in his victory, the boy feels even more motivated to keep trying his best in the reformatory. Seeing the fighter's tears, the woman gets a tissue to help him clean up, while the young man continues eating. Handing him the tissue, she orders the patient to finish his meal and get plenty of rest, because the next challenges will be tough. Even though he's emotional, the young man wipes his face and focuses on recovering his energy to face tomorrow's grueling training routine. Meanwhile, the scene shows the defeated villain being overpowered on the ground by someone who doesn't accept failure in that prison. The bald giant steps on the defeated man's face and calls him trash for not being able to beat a weakling like the rookie. Even all beaten up and bleeding, the psychopath lets out a bizarre laugh and comments that this situation is very good for him. With a crazy look in his eyes, the villain praises the protagonist's strength and reveals his sick desire to know more about him. Annoyed by his henchman's smile, the brute lands another violent kick and tells the psycho to shut up once and for all. Nearby, the boss's right-hand man lights a cigarette and watches his colleague's punishment in silence with a serious expression. Sitting on some boxes, the tattooed leader admits that the rookie surprised him and decides to take action on the matter. The big guy then orders the surveillance on Mamoru to continue, showing that he wants to know more about the boy's power. The boss wonders if the boy's victory was just a coincidence, or if something bigger is happening there. Angrily, the man questions if the boy really stopped being a loser and shows that he's very intrigued by the situation. The scene changes to the training room, and a single light bulb illuminates the dark and tense atmosphere of that secret location. At that, the instructor announces that he will add 2 new training routines, one for a superior fighting style, and another to learn how to fall. Without complaining, the young man prepares for the challenge and gets into a fighting stance with a focused look on his master. Immediately after, the training begins, and the two exchange blows at high speed to improve the student's skills. The mentor demonstrates a punching motion and shows the correct posture for the apprentice to copy the move perfectly. With clenched teeth, the pupil endures the pain of the attacks and forces himself not to pass out during this new phase of training. The master then lands a punch to the boy's stomach and reminds him of the importance of protecting himself from the enemy's direct hits. The instructor yells at him to tense his abs and protect his internal organs to avoid serious damage in a fight. Right after, the man grabs the boy's neck and explains that breathing at the neck is also a crucial point of combat. With the young man trapped, the veteran tells him to find out for how many seconds he can hold his breath before passing out. Once released, the hero is surprised by the test and realizes he still has a lot to learn to survive in that place. The master explains that the lack of air makes time seem slower, and that the body's 5 senses become much weaker. He then reveals that the moment an opponent starts breathing again is the best chance for victory, as their body is paralyzed. The student gets worried and asks what he should do if he's the one being attacked in that dangerous situation. With that, the instructor says the secret is to control your heartbeat so that your breathing follows the right rhythm. With a serious look, the veteran states that to become the strongest, you need to manipulate your body, using only the power of your mind. He then continues the lesson, saying that understanding body mechanics is the only way to deliver a truly effective blow. The man tells the boy to get a skeleton diagram and memorize everything to know exactly where to aim in future fights. The mentor warns that without memorizing the vital points, he would just be punching in the dark without any real strategy. He also teaches that when attacking, you need to immobilize the rival and use your knee to cause the maximum possible damage. When the young man practices a kick, the instructor yells that it's wrong and tells him to focus all his strength in his legs. With the correction, the movement comes out much better, and the master praises his progress, asking him to repeat the move one more time. The veteran then demands even more speed and tells his pupil to use both legs efficiently for a perfect attack. The boy obeys and delivers a powerful kick that destroys the target, showing all his progress in the tough training. With a focused look, the master observes the result of his teaching and seems satisfied with his student's dedication. Already dressed, the man praises the boy's performance, and the young man thanks him for all the valuable lessons he's learned so far. The veteran warns that he can now fight on his own, and that the first opponent is the most important to prove his worth. With that, he suggests that the cell leader would be the ideal target, and orders the rookie to defeat him without a second's hesitation. The boy faces the new challenge with determination as the master tells him to become the rabid dog that everyone fears in that place. Suddenly, a loudspeaker announces that free time is over and all inmates must return to their cells immediately. The prisoners then walk back to their rooms, and our hero follows the flow with a new and dangerous objective in mind. The master gives the young man the freedom to choose how and when to fight, but reminds him to use everything he practiced in training. At that, the boy walks down the hall and wonders if a formal duel or a surprise fight would be the best option for his mission. Suddenly, the protagonist stops and lifts his face with a serious expression, as if he has finally made a decision. Back in the cell leader finds it strange that the rookie returned so early from his free time that day. The leader then gets annoyed seeing a cellmate lying on his bed, and the guy replies for him not to be so petty. With that, the boss loses his patience and grabs the man by the collar, showing he won't tolerate such disrespect. He then tries to throw a punch, but the troublemaker uses the blanket to defend himself and gets his rival's hand dirty. The attacker's hand gets all dirty, and he doesn't understand what happened, as he didn't expect this tactic from his cellmate. Our hero notices the mess and tries to react, but the boss's hand is already covered in gunk from the prank. With a mocking smile, the long-haired man shows that he was just pulling a prank on his companion. He starts laughing loudly and comments that the rookie's reactions are always the best and funniest to watch. The guy then explains he was just using the blanket to clean his hands and says the leader is overreacting. While washing his hands at the sink, the prankster says they're all men in there, and so they need to cooperate with each other. At that moment, an older inmate approaches the protagonist and says that if he wants protection, this is a small price to pay. With a disgusted look, the young man glares at the man, showing he won't accept any kind of intimidation in that place. With that, the boy kicks the guy and yells at him to get away, while the man says he's cooler than the boss. Without hesitation, the hero punches the man in the face, making it clear he's not there to make friends with anyone. On the floor, the inmate gets furious and asks what the rookie thinks he's doing with all this rebellion. The man then goes on the attack, but the protagonist dodges with ease, showing the training paid off. Right after, he counter-attacks with a spinning kick, showing everyone in the cell that he's not a weakling anymore. The cell leader wipes the blood from his face and admits the rookie is much stronger than he initially thought. With a smile on his face, the leader warns that now he'll have to fight for real to win this dispute. At that moment, the man lunges forward with impressive speed and prepares to deliver a powerful blow. The veteran then attacks, but our hero manages to block the punch with both arms crossed in front of his body. With the impact, the boy feels an incredible force and complains that his hands went numb with just a single hit. At that, the cell leader asks how he thinks someone like him managed to get into a leadership position. He yells that he hates sucking up to others more than anything and charges at the protagonist with great anger. The man continues, saying that if he were incompetent, he would have ended up like Tamiya or any other loser around here. With that, he screams that he would have been finished a long time ago and throws a punch with all his might. But the young man grabs his rival's head and tells him to shut his mouth before things get worse in that cramped cell. Right after, the hero grabs the opponent's wrist with absurd strength, showing he's not messing around. The boy then yells at the leader not to dare insult this Masaki-kun again in front of him. With a quick movement, the protagonist twists the man's arm, who screams in pain as he feels his bones breaking. Furious, the cell leader swears he's going to end the rookie's life because of this great humiliation. The other inmates are startled, and one of them questions if the leader has always been this weak in fights. The hero doesn't waste time and lands a precise blow right on his opponent's ribs to destabilize him. Taking advantage of the opening, he kicks his rival's leg, causing him to completely lose his balance during the intense combat. At that, the young man uses a technique to take the man down and finish the fight once and for all. Right there, a memory surfaces, and we see the doctor explaining about the knee ligaments and how they cause intense pain. With the lesson in mind, the boy lands a kick exactly on that vital point, showing he learned his anatomy lesson well. With his opponent off balance, the protagonist continues the attack, showing the fight is far from over in that cell. He then lands a powerful kick right on his rival's chin, who can't defend against the swift and accurate blow. Taking advantage of the fall, our hero gets on top of the cell leader and starts delivering a series of punches. He pummels the fallen man without mercy to show everyone who's in charge in that place from now on. At that, the boy remembers his training, where the master taught him to immobilize an opponent to break their will to fight. With the lesson in mind, he lands a final blow on his rival, who spits out blood and finally seems to give up the fight. Seeing the scene, the other inmates decide to help their leader, because if he's defeated, everyone's situation will get much worse. Without a second thought, the long-haired guy runs towards the protagonist to try to break up the fight. But our hero notices his approach and lands a strong kick right in the stomach of the new attacker, sending him flying. The man doubles over in severe pain and complains that the rookie's hit was too strong for him to handle. Meanwhile, another inmate grabs a metal basin and tries to attack the young man from behind to help his boss. However, The boy turns around with a terrifying look and asks if the cellmate wants a piece of the action too. Frightened by the glare, the man trembles and says he was just passing by and didn't want to get involved in their fight. On the ground, the cell leader takes advantage of the distraction and pulls a makeshift weapon from under his dirty clothes. With a look of hatred, the man prepares for a surprise attack, showing he won't accept defeat so easily. He then yells that the rookie shouldn't have let his guard down and lunges with the blade to end the fight for good. At that moment, the weapon pierces our hero's side, who feels a sharp, unexpected pain from the blow. The attacker shouts for the young man to have a nice rest and tries to land another blow to make sure he doesn't get up again. The makeshift blade goes even deeper into the boy's body as the cell leader smiles at his dirty victory. But with his eyes glowing red, the protagonist glares at his rival and warns him that he's the one who's going down. Even injured, the hero manages to kick his opponent's arm and avoid what would have been a fatal blow. With that, he lands a direct punch to the cell leader's face, who wasn't expecting such a quick reaction from the rookie. The makeshift weapon flies away and falls to the ground as the leader completely loses the advantage he had in the fight. The protagonist drags the defeated man across the floor, showing the other inmates that he's not to be messed with. With a threatening look, the boy asserts his dominance over the former leader, showing that things will be different from now on. He holds his wound and feels the sharp pain, but tears of relief stream down his face, tired from so much tension. Seeing the outcome of the fight, the roommates are shocked and realize that power has just changed hands. The young man then grabs the defeated man's hair and declares himself the new leader of that cell for all to see. The scene changes to the prison hallway, and the atmosphere becomes even heavier after the end of the power struggle in the room. A guard appears and announces that the lights will be turned off in 10 minutes, and everyone should be in their beds soon. The inmates start getting ready for bed, and our hero feels a bit strange with the new position he's earned. With a clenched fist, the boy reflects on his victory, and the adrenaline from the battle still runs strong in his veins. He cries a little, barely able to believe he actually managed to defeat an enemy as strong as the former leader. While one of the inmates makes his bed, he complains that the rookie is in the way, and the mood gets a little tense. The young man wonders if he had to go that far, but the other man reminds him that those are the rules of this cruel place. With a serious look, the long-haired man warns him not to get comfortable, because the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. Intrigued, the new leader asks what happens when someone in his position ends up losing their post to another inmate. Seeing his concern, the cellmate questions if he's actually worried about the future of the man he just defeated. With that, the veteran warns that now that he's won, he no longer needs to wear the baggy clothes to hide his strength. The long-haired boy then gives a final warning, saying that now everyone will want to challenge him to take his place. The lights go out, and the guard yells for everyone to go to sleep as the hallway bars are cast in the reformatory's total gloom. At that moment, the black-haired young man reflects on the leader's return and knows things are about to get very complicated for him. He then realizes that to climb the hierarchy in this place, he needs to use his fists, and focuses on the general as his next combat target. The boy then sits on his bed and thinks that he needs to get stronger for the sake of his friend Masaki, who depends so much on his protection. Lying down, the protagonist admits he's still not perfect and feels he needs to learn much more from Master Shien's teachings. The scene then shows the empty prison hallway, plunged into absolute silence as the night deepens in that hostile and cold environment. A lone shadow is cast on the stone wall, indicating that someone is watching everything that happens, hidden in the deep darkness. Soon, the guard passes by on his nightly rounds with his powerful flashlight, briefly illuminating the cold cells of this detention center. At that instant, a prisoner holds a small piece of paper, showing he's very aware of the latest events in his wing. But another man approaches and calls his colleague by the title of General as the mysterious mood between the two inmates grows. With a calm look, the man with two-toned hair reads the note and comments that the former cell leader really did lose the power struggle. The general then calls the defeated man a loser, showing he has no respect for anyone who can't maintain their position. At that, the powerful inmate clenches his fist tightly and realizes the rookie is finally starting to show his true colors. The image focuses on the South District sign, indicating that news of the recent fight is already spreading throughout the entire complex. Meanwhile, several laughs echo through a room full of books, showing that someone is finding this whole situation very amusing and bizarre. With a smirk, the pink-haired leader comments that Mamoru did much better than he imagined in that cruel dispute. The villain then laughs while lying on his bed, imagining the worried look on his rival's face upon hearing of the young man's surprising victory. At that moment, we see the West District sign and it's clear that all sectors of the prison now know the new fighter's name. Inside a lonely locker room, a muscular man with a scar on his face reads the message about the end of the intense combat in the neighboring cell. With a malicious smile, the brute confirms that the recruit really won the fight and seems very interested in the boy's potential. The scene shifts to the East District, where a man walks down the hall, and news of the rookie's victory reaches there as well. He then knocks lightly on a cell door and prepares to deliver the important message to the area's boss. At that, the man informs Mr. Naruse that Amamori managed to defeat the former cell leader in a tough fight. From inside, the tattooed boss closes a book and coldly asks if the boy suffered any serious injuries in the confrontation. The messenger replies that Amamori is unharmed, but the former cell leader ended up seriously injured in the dispute. The boss then understands the situation, and the man outside simply thanks him and wishes him a good night before leaving. Alone in his cell, the man in the tank top stares at the full moon through the window and reflects on the new information he received. With a serious look, the man in the tank top turns around and realizes that things in that reformatory have just gotten much more complicated. The scene cuts to the outside of the prison, showing the imposing building as the day slowly breaks on the horizon. In the cafeteria, the other inmates whisper and look at our hero with fear and curiosity due to his sudden fame. The young man notices that the reaction is different from when he beat Koyama and wonders if it's because he fought for a position. Suddenly, the West District boss approaches the table and calls the protagonist by name with an intimidating smile on his face. With a cynical look, the man introduces himself as Shusu Kazami, the powerful boss of the entire west wing of that dangerous prison. The boy questions if it's safe for him to be there, but the boss says he gets along with the North leader, so there's no problem. The veteran then jokes that the other leader would be annoyed, and the rookie gets straight to the point and asks what he wants. At that, the tattooed man reveals that the North boss won't let it slide, but that he sees potential in the boy and wants to help him out. Confused, the black-haired young man doesn't understand the proposal and asks what the man really means by this offer of help. With a wicked smile, the boss offers him protection in exchange for the boy becoming his spy inside the reformatory. The hero repeats the proposal, and the leader says that since he's also a boss, this protection task is very easy for him. But without a second thought, our protagonist refuses the offer, leaving the powerful West District boss speechless. The boss is shocked and asks if the young man thinks he can fight Kanemoto and his men all by himself. Calmly, the boy explains that if a powerful person seeks help from a target, it means that person has no allies. He continues, saying the leader wouldn't do anything alone and would be taken out before he could even help him in a fight. Furious, the tattooed man slams his hand on the table, showing all his frustration with the rookie's refusal. The brute then stands up, tells the boy to do whatever he wants, and storms out of the cafeteria, very annoyed. As he walks away, the boss thinks that the boy has a bold attitude for a rookie, and that he's getting too big for his britches. At that, one of the prisoners tells a colleague to inform Korea that Amamori rejected the offer made by Kazami earlier. Later, an inmate questions the reason for so much attention on the protagonist, just because he beat a leader. With that, the blonde man with a scar comments that he thought the rookie was a crybaby, but he exceeded everyone's expectations. As the boy walks down the hall, a voice says that his victory was actually a major incident for the prison. At that moment, someone calls the hero's name from behind, making him stop suddenly in the middle of the hallway to his cell. When he turns around, the young man sees two men approaching, and one of them seems to be a very important figure in that place. The taller man approaches and says this is the first time they've finally met in person. The man then lights a cigarette and introduces himself as Koichi Naruse, the powerful boss of the entire East District. The scene shows the protagonist alone near a barred window as he processes the new, unexpected encounter. With his hand on his chin, the boy seems thoughtful and tries to understand what all these leaders suddenly want with him. But suddenly, the young man feels dizzy and almost falls as his body reacts to something strange happening to him. With a sweaty face, he apologizes, and the East boss calls his name, concerned about the boy's condition. At that instant, the general appears with his gang and says with a smile that he's finally found the person he was looking for. The boy faces the new enemy and asks what he wants with that whole entourage of henchmen around. With that, one of the men gets angry and yells at the rookie to show more respect, as he is speaking with Eiji Ishida, the boss of the North. At this, the hero realizes that another boss has appeared and wonders if this Kanemoto guy is behind this new trouble. The general then reveals that the defeated cell leader was one of his men, and the protagonist understands the situation. With a smile, the powerful inmate says he won't fight the boy, as it wouldn't be an easy contest for him. The man with two toned hair then orders his henchmen to give the rookie a proper welcome, and the fight begins. Without wasting time, the hero dodges the first punch and prepares to face both opponents at the same time. He manages to dodge the blows with agility, showing that the tough training really paid off. With firm arms, the young man blocks one of the attacks and prepares to counter with all his built-up strength. Clenching his teeth, the boy withstands the pressure from both enemies and focuses on finding an opening to counter-attack. With a quick movement, he lands a punch in the stomach of one of the henchmen, who feels the impact of the direct hit. The protagonist continues to move down the hallway, trying to avoid being surrounded by the boss's two brutes. But one of the men manages to land a solid punch on the young man's face, who starts to bleed from the force of the blow. Even injured, the hero stays on his feet and tries to continue the fight as the rivals' attacks become more intense. He protects himself from another punch with his arm, showing that he won't give up easily, even at a great numerical disadvantage. Seeing an opening, one of the henchmen prepares a final blow, and the boy realizes he's in a very dangerous situation. The punch lands squarely, and the protagonist is thrown backward by the violent impact of the strong henchman's attack. On the ground and pinned down, the young man suffers in pain while one of the men asks if he enjoyed the beating. The general approaches and questions how it feels to be defeated by just two of his weakest men. He then warns that the cell leader was the weakest of them all, and beating him only makes him a small fish in a shallow pond. The general squats down and says he's a generous guy, but doesn't forgive those who embarrass him in front of others. With a smile, he says the rookie made him a laughingstock, and so revenge is a natural thing to happen. Even all beaten up, the boy glares at the boss, who prepares to let his henchmen take care of the rest. The North leader then turns and tells his men to have fun with the boy, who is now completely defenseless. Lying on the floor, the hero realizes the huge difference in strength and thinks that he only knows how to fight one opponent at a time. He then wonders if the path to becoming the strongest of all is really something so far out of reach. The scene then changes and shows the door of one of the cells in that dark reformatory, full of deadly dangers. Back in the room, the protagonist walks slowly and wipes the blood from his face after the beating he took in the hallway. Upon reaching his cell, his new roommates see the deplorable state he's in after the nasty fight. Sitting on the bed, the former cell leader is also all beaten up and covered with a sheet to keep warm from the cold. In a weak voice, the defeated man mutters something while our hero just watches the scene from a distance. The boy thinks about not approaching, knowing his cellmate has his pride and probably doesn't want to be seen like this. Suddenly, one of the inmates approaches the former boss with a mocking smile and a provocative attitude. He calls the man by his number and tells the poor guy to get up from the floor because he has an important task for him now. The bully says he needs to use the bathroom and warns that the defeated man knows very well what he needs to do in this situation. With a look of pure hatred, the ex-leader glares at the troublemaker, showing he won't accept this humiliation quietly, but the attacker asks who he thinks he is and lands a violent blow on the man who is still recovering. At that, the guy says the ex-boss is now just trash, and that this kind of humiliating work is for people like him. Then another inmate joins in and yells at the fallen man, saying he's nothing in that cell anymore. With clenched teeth, the former leader holds back his anger and the humiliation of having lost all his power and respect. With his hand on the floor, the former leader tries to balance himself to avoid falling and messing up the humiliating task he was given. At that, the attacker threatens to finish him off if he fails and starts laughing at his old boss's pathetic situation. But our hero can't stand to watch the scene any longer and yells with all his might for them to stop this nonsense. The boy then grabs the bully's shoulder, stopping him from continuing the humiliation against the man on the floor. With a serious look, the new leader tells the guy to stop the foolishness and mind his own business. A cellmate says it's the rule, but the protagonist replies that he doesn't care about the traditions of that place. With that, he declares himself the new boss and warns that he will not tolerate any kind of humiliation against other inmates. With a threatening look, the boy challenges anyone who has a problem with the new rule to face him with force. The other prisoners are left speechless and look at each other, not knowing what to do in the face of the new order imposed by the rookie. At that, the long-haired guy finds the whole situation stupid and disagrees with the new leader's attitude. But suddenly, the former boss shouts Amamori's name, showing that he did not like his intervention in the fight at all. Angrily, he asks who gave him the right to feel sorry for him, and says he would rather be eliminated than go through this shame. The man then challenges the attacker and swears he will be the one laughing at the end of all this mess in the cell. Seeing the reaction, the bully smiles and says that if the victim himself agrees, then there's no problem there anymore. Our hero is shocked by the situation and doesn't know how to react upon seeing that his help was completely rejected. The scene cuts and shows the infirmary sign, indicating that the young man went there after all the commotion in the cell. Inside a room, the boy takes out all his frustration on a punching bag with strong and precise blows. He punches with great anger and wonders why things to be so complicated and unfair in that place. In his mind, the young man just wanted to end the rotten rules so that everyone could live with a little more peace. With another powerful punch, he screams and questions why the others can't understand his good intentions. Suddenly, the door opens, and the doctor enters the training room right in the middle of his outburst of pure anger. Surprised by the visit, the boy stops his exercise and calls for Dr. Kando with a very confused look on his face. With that, she hands a towel to the young man and asks what happened, since he seems very annoyed about something. At this, the protagonist starts to vent and says the whole situation is very complicated, and he doesn't know what to do. He continues explaining that he doesn't understand, because he just wanted things to be better for everyone in that cell. The doctor then explains that to them, the boy is denying the only logic they know, and that's why they don't accept it. With her hand on his shoulder, she advises him to keep fighting because he will only become the boss if he doesn't give up on his plan. Determined, the boy says he will try 1,000 times harder, but regrets that his master isn't there to teach him. Curious, the woman asks what he wanted to learn, and the young man reveals that he needs to know how to fight against several people at once. With a smile, she says it's easy and that the tactic is to run, because then the enemies will lower their guard while chasing him. She then moves quickly and reveals that this is the perfect moment to attack the vital points of each one of them. At that, the doctor stops in front of him and explains that the blow needs to be unique and fatal to really work in a fight. The scene focuses on the empty room and shows that the demonstration was so fast that the boy could barely follow it with his eyes. Shocked by the doctor's speed, the young man breaks out in a cold sweat and realizes she is much stronger than she looks. She pulls the towel back and asks if he doesn't remember the warning she gave him before about her skills. With a smile, the woman reveals that she is not an ordinary doctor and tells them to leave the training there for now. At that, she warns him that it's almost time for work and that if he's late, his evaluation could drop a lot. With an encouraging smile, she wishes him good luck and calls him the cell leader, showing her support for the boy's plan. The scene changes to work time, and we see a mop on the floor as the inmates begin the day's cleaning. It's then explained that inmates from the same group work together and are evaluated on their attitude and performance on the task. The chart shows that each inmate receives points according to their performance in the reformatory's daily tasks. By accumulating a certain number of these marks, prisoners earn the right to receive visits from their families. With that, the management and assignment of each job are in the hands of the leader, who has the most trust from the top boss. At this moment, we discovered that the one responsible for commanding the entire North District is the feared Ishida Iji. The guard then warns that if just one person fails at their job, everyone in the group loses their points at once. With a focused look, the hero responds positively and accepts the challenge of maintaining order among his peers. The officer then demands that no one slacks off and orders everyone to start working seriously right now. At that, the prisoners walk in a single-file line to the work area, where the heavy machinery is already running. As he walks, the black-haired boy thinks that at this rate, he might be able to see his beloved mother very soon. But two inmates whisper in the background, saying that the North leader is going to pull something on the rookie again. Suddenly, a loud sound of steam comes from inside one of the industrial sanitation machines in that wing. Smiling wickedly, the henchmen notice the target's arrival and confirm that they are ready for their dirty plan. Calmly, the protagonist approaches one of the workers and requests a disinfection tray for the job. At that, the man removes the metal object from inside the hot oven and prepares to hand the item to the boy. Handing over the material, the man mockingly warns that the piece just came out and is at 200 degrees. Even feeling the intense heat, the young man places the heavy object on his metal transport cart. At that instant, we see that one of the wheels of the cargo vehicle is completely broken. With sweat dripping, the boy realizes that the equipment simply won't move and gets worried about the delay. The worker then warns that there are no extra carts and orders the student to carry everything using only his hands. At that, another inmate cynically asks if the hero can't push the weight with that completely destroyed wheel. The short-haired prisoner mocks the situation and states that the equipment can't take another second of constant use. With that, the bully asks if the rookie is scared and says he's disappointed to see him run from such weak heat. At this, the hero realizes they're doing all of this on purpose and gets very annoyed with his rivals' unprovoked taunting. The young man then loses his patience and grabs the attacker's collar with great force to show he won't take any more disrespect. At that moment, the other inmates get scared and shout, asking what he's doing, since they're all going to lose their valuable points. Soon, one of the accomplices starts screaming for help, lying that Amamori is hitting someone for no reason. With that, a group of prisoners approaches and asks if the boy has gone completely crazy to cause trouble in Ishida's territory. The student notices that a large crowd has gathered quickly and wonders where the guards, who are supposed to be watching the work area, are. But the big guy in the group smiles bizarrely and reveals that the officers are on their break, and the place is completely clear. At that instant, the protagonist realizes it was all a trap set by the North boss, and that he can't beat so many enemies at once. With a push, the villain says the boy should have just followed orders from the start to avoid this unnecessary suffering. Then a hand quickly moves towards the young man's head, and he can't react in time to dodge the surprise attack. With great violence, the attacker shoves the boy's face against the metal counter and pins him down with immense force on his arm. At that, the bully orders the hero to carry the weight alone and threatens to stick his head in the hot machine if he keeps resisting. The scene shows the metal containers glowing hot as steam rises, indicating the real danger of getting badly burned there. In a hurry, the villain tells the young man to speed up and asks if he wants to be cooked alive while holding the heavy items. The protagonist extends his trembling arms and grabs the scorching metal box, feeling the intense pain spread through his palm. Clenching his teeth with all his will, the boy shows an expression of pure suffering as he tries to endure the absurd heat. With that, the bullies tell him to be very careful and warn him not to drop anything, or he'll have to wash everything all over again, from scratch. Finally, the image focuses on the cafeteria sign, indicating that this difficult task must be completed at that final destination no matter what. With great effort, the boy finally places the hot box on the table, completing his part of the daily task. He then delivers the order, and the other inmate congratulates him on a job well done, despite all the difficulties. But suddenly, the colleague is shocked to see the young man's hands completely burned and covered in painful blisters. With that, he calls a guard and warns that Amamori got burned and urgently needs to go to the local infirmary. The officer just nods his head and allows the two to leave for the necessary medical treatment for the injury. At that, the two prisoners walk side by side down the hall towards the supposed infirmary of the reformatory. The black-haired protagonist follows suspiciously with a serious and grim look on his face as he moves along the path. At that moment, his companion notices the suspicion and turns his head back with a very tense expression. The hero then questions the rote and warns his colleague that the infirmary isn't in that direction of the hallway. With a wicked smile, the man says that obviously they are going to take care of his treatment, as agreed upon before. At that instant, another henchman appears and warns that this is a direct order from the boss, Ishida, and for the young man to give up. One of the inmates questions if this isn't too cruel, but is reprimanded by his accomplice, who doesn't like the criticism. The other one threatens him and asks if he wants to experience the same kind of treatment to learn to keep quiet. With that, the scene shows the panel of a cold chamber, marking the temperature at 60 degrees below zero inside. Right after, the young man is thrown forcefully into the cold room, while desperately screaming to be let go. The villain warns that no guard will enter such a cold place, and tells the boy to stop screaming for nothing. He then points to a valve and says that it's a special gift from the great Ishida for the cell's rookie. With that, they hold the hero with great force and force him to approach the completely frozen metal pipe. At that moment, the attackers force the boy's hand to touch the cold metal valve against his will. With his skin sticking to the iron, he realizes he was wrong and was an idiot to trust his enemies. Inside the cold chamber, the boy reflects that in that place, violence is everything, and power is the only law that truly matters. He understands that, if he doesn't accept this cruel reality, he won't be able to survive for long in that hostile environment. With that, the young man pulls his hand back, with the skin all torn, and realizes he needs to do something to escape that situation. He then screams in pain as he holds his wound, and blood starts to drip onto the cold floor of the refrigeration room. With a look of pure fury, he thinks that he has tried so hard and will no longer endure this kind of humiliation silently. At that, the hero clenches his bloody fist and decides that even without hope, he will resist with all his strength. Right after, he goes on the attack and shouts that he will fight until his last breath against all his enemies. As the fight begins, the blood from his hand continues to drip, forming a small puddle on the gray floor of the cold chamber. With a powerful kick, the protagonist knocks down one of the attackers, showing that the retaliation will be in kind. Angered, the leader of the bully group yells at the rookie and swears he will destroy him for his audacity. While dodging the blows, the boy remembers the advice the doctor gave him during one of the training sessions in the infirmary. In his mind, the doctor explains that the tactic is simple and he just needs to run to lure the opponents into a trap. With that, whoever is chasing him will let their guard down, creating the perfect opportunity for a precise counter-attack. In that moment of distraction, the young man must hit an enemy's vital point to achieve a quick and efficient knockout. The hero then lands a powerful kick to the head of one of the rivals, applying the finishing blow to end the fight. Suddenly, one of the prison guards appears at the hallway door, and the situation changes completely for everyone inside. The attackers are startled by the officer's unexpected arrival and wonder what he's doing away from his post. The guard yells that's enough of the mess and orders everyone to stop fighting because it's time to get back to work. He warns that if they continue with the commotion, no one will earn any points for today's tasks as a punishment. Angrily, the leader of the bullies complains about the interference and shows all his frustration at not being able to finish the job. The leader of the attackers warns that next time he won't go so easy and leaves the place with his henchmen. With that, the group moves away through a dense mist, leaving our protagonist behind after the commotion. Alone, the boy thinks that he was saved by the guard and that Ishida is using the work to torment him on purpose. He realizes his rival is very cunning and can't be beaten by force alone and wonders what the next attack will be. Suddenly, the East boss touches his shoulder and says there's a way to avoid the abuse without needing to get stronger. The man in the tank top then offers protection and invites him to join his East District to finally have peace. Completely confused and with no way out, the young man doesn't know what to do and becomes desperate with this unexpected proposal from the boss. Back at training, the instructor yells at the student to lift his leg higher and not to stop the exercise for anything. At that, the boy executes a powerful kick, showing his progress while the master watches, lying on the floor. But the boy seems distracted, and the mentor asks if something happened for him to be so unfocused. With his head down, the young man apologizes, showing that his mind really isn't focused on the tough training. At that moment, a red pen crosses our hero's name off a list of authorized visits at the reformatory. The protagonist goes to a guard and asks why he can't have visitors, but the officer says he has no points. With a wicked smile, the North boss says that if he behaves, maybe he'll get to see his family very soon. Back at training, he asks his master if the visit was canceled because he was weak, and the man replies that it probably was. With a serious look, the veteran comments that it's hard to look at his student in the pitiful state he's in. But the instructor reveals that even so, the boy possesses a secret weapon that can completely change the game in his favor. He then says that this weapon is an unbreakable, well, that is second to none, and that's the most important thing of all. The mentor explains that this willpower will turn him into a fierce wolf, even if he's not the strongest in the place. With a pat on the shoulder, the master encourages him to use this inner strength to overcome all the challenges that will come his way. The instructor says that if the young man works hard, he will surely be rewarded for all his effort one day. He then continues, saying that his pupil will be able to see the person he wants to protect, and an image of his mother appears. At that moment, the hero clenches his fist tightly, showing that he's ready to continue training with more determination. The boy then yells with all his determination that he just needs to get much stronger to overcome everything. With a focused look, the student turns to his master and asks them to continue the tough training. The boy then gets into a fighting stance and says he needs to aim higher to achieve his ultimate goals. The scene changes and shows the bars of a cell, indicating that the turmoil in that reformatory is far from over. Meanwhile, a bald brute complains that this Ishida guy is using dirty tricks to manipulate everyone. At that, the man gets angry and realizes that his boss seemed satisfied with the situation and curses out his rival. With that, the image focuses on the cold chamber door, showing that the last incident is still fresh in their memory. Walking down the hallway, the protagonist thinks that to win a fight, you need to assess the situation very carefully. Nearby, the big bald guy complains that he was humiliated by Ishida and thinks about hitting someone to relieve stress. The tough guy approaches the corner and reflects that in the end, the strongest one is always the one who comes out on top. At that instant, the two meet in the hallway, and the tension between the two rivals in that place escalates. With a mocking smile, the bald guy asks if the new cell leader is having fun with his new position of power. Without answering, our hero just glares at the man with a cold look, showing he's not afraid of the imminent danger. The boy then simply walks past the brute, completely ignoring him as if he were nothing. Angrily, the big guy complains about his audacity, and his henchman warns him not to dare lay a finger on the boy. But the hero hits the henchman and yells not to say Ishida's name, while the man was threatening to tell him everything. At that, the bald guy gets furious with the attack and swears he'll prove to everyone that he's the strongest in that place. With a sideways glance, the protagonist prepares for the combat that's about to begin in that prison hallway. He then lands a powerful punch right on the brute's face, who can't dodge the quick and direct blow. At this, the boy feels his rival's incredible strength and realizes his power is much greater than he initially imagined. The student understands that if he stays only on the defensive, he will definitely end up losing the fight against the big guy. With that, he remembers his master's lesson and decides to aim for his opponent's weak spot, which is his unprotected jaw. The young man plants his foot firmly on the ground and prepares to deliver a precise blow with all his accumulated energy. Right after, he throws an uppercut, trying to hit the bald man's chin to end the fight. He thinks that he can't give the enemy any opening to retaliate, as that would be his immediate end in the dispute. The boy changes his target and hits his rival's neck, but the blow doesn't seem to have much effect on the brute's body. Angrily, he realizes he missed the vital point and is now in a very dangerous position against his adversary. Seizing the chance, the tough guy grabs the young man's arm with a smile, showing that the advantage in the fight has shifted. Without mercy, the man lands a violent headbutt on the hero's face, who feels the brutal impact of the surprise attack. With the force of the blow, the boy stumbles back a few steps and tries to stay on his feet to avoid falling to the hallway floor. Even all beaten up and bleeding, he mocks his opponent and asks if that's all he can do in the fight. Without wasting time, the student drags his foot and prepares to advance again, showing he's not going to give up. With a quick movement, he charges at the bald man and decides to focus his blows on the lower part of his rival's body. At that, the boy tries to punch, but his fist ends up hitting the floor hard, and the attack doesn't work out well. The big guy takes advantage of the opening and lands a strong kick right on the young man's leg, which was completely unprotected. But with the movement, the brute loses his balance and ends up falling on his butt after delivering the blow. On the ground, the hero glares at his opponent and wonders if his real weak spot is his legs and not his chain. The brute gets up and thinks that maybe he underestimated the rookie too much as the fight prepares to resume. With great anger in his eyes, the bald guy yells at his henchman to finish the boy off without any mercy. At that, our hero wastes no time and lands a strong kick on one of the attackers who was approaching to attack. But another henchman appears from the side and tries to hit the young man with a quick blow to take him down early in the fight. The protagonist takes a hard punch to the face and feels the impact of the brute's attack, which catches him completely by surprise. Right after, he's hit in the back by another enemy, and the numerical disadvantage starts to weigh heavily on the combat. All beaten up, the boy realizes it's no use fighting, as there are too many opponents for him to face alone. Suddenly, his gaze focuses on something, and he seems to have an idea to escape the imminent danger in the hallway. He spots the open door of the cold chamber and realizes that's his only chance to turn the tables on all his rivals. Without a second thought, the young man runs towards his objective while the attackers watch him, confused by his action. At this, the bald guy gets annoyed with the escape and shouts, asking if the rookie really thinks he can get away so easily. The boy manages to get into the cold room and slams the door shut to protect himself from his pursuers for a while. With a wicked smile, the brute says that if the boy wants to play hide and seek, he'll join the game. He glares at the closed door and warns that this is a deadly game that ends the moment the prey is captured. One of the henchmen approaches the cold chamber door to try to figure out what the hero is planning inside. The tough guy then enters the dark room and calls for the young man to show himself and face his final destiny right there. Amidst the cold fog, the man searches for his target, but can't see anything clearly in the dark environment. Suddenly, a punch comes out of the darkness and lands squarely on the bald man's face, who is shocked by the surprise attack. At that, the protagonist takes advantage of the darkness and starts attacking his enemy without giving him a chance to fight back. With a quick movement, the hero kicks one of the valves on the wall, and something starts to leak into the enclosed space. With his mouth bleeding, the brute gets furious with the attack and realizes the situation has turned very ugly for him. He then tries to run for the door and yells at the young man not to mess with him because things are about to get much worse. But our hero is faster and manages to close the cold chamber door before the bald guy could escape. With the temperature at 150 degrees below zero, the man swears he will send Mamoru to his doom for good. Outside, an inmate recounts that the boy closed the door, and all they could hear were the big guy's pathetic curses. Suddenly, another group appears and tells them to get out of there, because that territory belongs to another prison faction. With a mocking smile, the man scoffs at the newcomers and calls them someone's frozen lackeys. At this, one of the men from the other group gets angry at the taunt and curses at the rivals with a look full of pent-up anger. The henchman yells that the boss is angry because Ishida has been acting behind his back, and they used to be like brothers. Watching the beef, an inmate comments that Ishida's faction is getting cocky, and that this is a disaster for Amamori. The scene changes and shows the prison building at night as the tension between the factions only continues to grow. We see a group of prisoners running in a hurry through one of the dark corridors of that dangerous detention center. One of the men rushes his colleagues, saying they need to run or they won't make it to their destination in time. With his hand on his friend's shoulder, he hurries him along, but the other one doesn't seem to like his companion's attitude at all. The man then shows his colleague and asks what happened, telling him not to get in his way again. Our hero watches the rush and wonders if they are heading towards his room to cause trouble. Right after, the group stops in front of a cell and prepares to invade the place with a very serious look. But the protagonist appears and tells them to get out of the way because he is the new leader of that cell from now on. With a determined look, the boy faces the invaders and shows that he won't tolerate any mess in his territory. On the floor, the former cell leader is all beaten up and wonders what on earth happened for him to get beaten so badly. At that, the East leader comments that this Nagao guy took out his fury on that man just because he couldn't get close to the rookie now. With a piercing gaze, the boss asks why the boy is there and says he's still waiting for a clear answer about the other day. He explains that the guy only managed to rise because the other one was slacking on guard duty, and that's what made Nagao so furious. At that moment, the veteran reveals that the poor guy begged Ishida for help, but the request was denied because he was no longer useful. With that, the man states that fear and desperation can change people, showing that this is the fate of those who lose their prominent place in the center. Then some officers arrive, yelling that this isn't a show and ordering them to take the injured inmate away from that area immediately. Devastated, the fallen prisoner can barely speak and appears to be in a deep state of shock from everything that is happening to him. At that, the man tries to defend himself, saying it wasn't on purpose and that he couldn't see anything, while pushing one of the guards. Short of breath, the guard gets angry with the resistance and orders the others to restrain the man quickly before the situation gets completely out of their control. At that instant, the inmate screams desperately, asking them to stop, and swears he can prove his innocence about what happened in all the confusion. But the officer doesn't want to listen and lands a violent blow that sends the boy flying backward with a simply brutal and cowardly force. With the impact, the red liquid spreads across the floor, and the injured man's bandages become completely stained, showing the severity of the assault. The guard then uses his radio to call the hospital and comments with contempt that the guy is already finished and won't cause any more trouble. Outraged, the hero says that all of this is ridiculous and asks if having power gives you the right to do whatever you want, but the boss agrees with the idea. The man in the tank top explains that's why everyone seeks the top, because the life of those who fall becomes miserable and sad inside this place. At this, the veteran remembers the young man's desire to see his family and says that in the East District, that can happen without him needing to be strong. But the protagonist reflects on what would happen after a few years of protection and realizes that temporary peace is not the real solution. He remembers his mother and the dangerous Kanemoto and wonders how he will be able to protect what he loves if he remains weak and dependent. With a clenched fist, the boy states that he doesn't need a fleeting peace and says with all his will that he needs more and more power. Hearing the declaration, the East leader gives a slight smile and seems very satisfied with the unshakable determination the rookie just showed. The boss warns that this Nagao guy will want revenge and that he's dangerous, but our hero doesn't care about the warning. At that, the East leader says goodbye and reinforces his invitation for the boy to join his district if he changes his mind about the offer. The scene then changes to the next day, and we see the prison yard during the inmates' free time. At that moment, a guard yells that free time is over and orders everyone from the South District to return to their cells immediately. With that, the big bald guy gets annoyed with the warning and wonders if this Shibahara guy is also in the yard. He then spots Kai Shibahara, the head of the South District, and says the guy has been getting on his nerves, and now is the time to let off some steam. But his henchman warns him that it's a terrible idea, because he was just reprimanded by the prison's top boss for the last fight. The brute doesn't care and yells that he couldn't care less, as long as his trouble isn't with this Amamori guy again. Without a second thought, the bald man starts walking with a determined look towards his current target in the yard. He then yells that he's going to crush his rival to show who's superior, and so that no one makes a fool of him in that place again.